It is now 1:30 p.m. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission regular meeting, Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, at 1:30 p.m. in the Commission chambers. Kindly silence your cell phones. Town Clerk, please read the roll.
Commissioner David.
Present.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes, he's here.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bobby.
Present.
Mayor Zellniker.
Here.
Town Attorney Shutt.
Here.
And Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? If not, we need a motion to accept the agenda the way it is.
I make the motion to accept as is.
Second.
There are none.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Clerk, please read the civility pledge.
We will be respectful of one another even when we disagree. We will direct all comments to the issue. We will avoid personal attacks. Politeness costs so little, by Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you. And now we will have a presentation, an update on the wetland properties within the town of Highland Beach boundary from Commissioner Gossett-Seidman. And I
Mayor,
refer,
do we have any public comments first?
she has it after.
We have
The
an
order is after.
The public comments
She
are
has
after
it on
the
the-
presentation.
Okay. Okay, so we will have the presentation, and then we go into public comments. Thank you.
1 second. Okay, thank you. A couple months ago, if you recall, we were discussing the wetlands and adopting a possible policy for all of the wetlands. And I, at that time, asked a question, well, gee, who owns these other swaths of wetlands? And we weren't sure. So as it turned out, I was at a social event with government leaders and news people and other people up in West Palm Beach, and lo and behold, wetlands came up as a topic, and a fellow from the county said, well, here, I'll give you this app, and you can check it all out for yourself. So I went online and checked it out, and as it turns out, Palm Beach County owns the majority of our wetlands. And I found that very interesting, and so I wanted to present it here just in a quick slideshow taken from that app, which I think anyone can really do if they research it online, but it was new to me since I'm not an architect. And so this first one is starting from the south of town. That is, let me see, the Milani Park area. And as you can see, it's just heading north from there. And then this shows who owns it. And that's Palm Beach County. And that's for the second track on the ocean side. And then further north is the property owned privately by Mrs. Milani, and it is the red square there as seen. And then the parcel just north of that, which is not part of the Milani property, is owned by a different person in town. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it comes to basically Triano. But that is not part of Mrs. Milani's property, which some people had thought it was all one giant parcel. It is not. And then we go further. This shows the owner of that property. And then we go up to the center of town a little further. This is north of Highland Beach Drive, and that is very nearly 10 acres. It's 9.98 acres between Regency and at the north and Highland Beach Drive to the south. And that is owned by the county, as you see there. And this is the section that we have been dealing with involving a corporation wanting to develop that parcel. And just north of it, which lies at the southwest corner, basically, of Toscana, it's a pretty big wetlands area that's owned by the county. Again, there's the county. This section is just northwest of St. Lucy's Church and extends pretty far into the intercoastal, actually, very far. And it's over 5 acres, and that's owned by Palm Beach County. This section is just south and west of Coronado, and that is owned by Coronado at Highland Beach Condos, which you'll see here. It did not have a size of it, the parcel listed. So these, I thought, for people who don't have a boat or don't ride on the Lady Atlantic, these are just some views of the wetlands. This just happens to be the front of, I believe, Tim Burnett, you live in that building, I believe. This is the set of 3 condos in the center of town. Oh, you're further south, sorry, correction. This would be on the bottom picture, this would be, again, just south of that parcel. The top photo is just north of Town Hall. And the lower parcel is the Highland Beach Club, the mangroves just in front of that and to the north of it. And here we have, that would be Toscana and their property. There we have Toscana again. And on the lower portion, that is Palm Beach County and Mr. Rothberg, I believe. And I threw this in because it's a very cool heron nest with a bird perched. So that's the end of the slideshow, but I thought it would be good for people to be able to see who owns this. And I don't know if we need a motion or if we wanted to discuss, but if we would want to have Mr. Labadie look into just touching base with the county and seeing if there's anything we need to do. What I heard off the record is they don't have any plans to do much of anything. It is protected wetlands, but I don't know if we need to get something in writing or if it's fine as is. That's not my department. So if I could just ask Mr. Labadie if something would be worthwhile looking into.
Sure, to reach out to them, see if they'll have an expressed intent of what they plan to do with their surplus properties or if these have been identified for anything. Sure.
Okay, it comes to almost 20 acres, or maybe just a tad over. So that's the presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, we thank you very much. And at this time, we will go to public comments. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to speak on non-agenda items only. All comments will be directed to the commission as a body through the presiding officer. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Please come to the podium, clearly speak into the microphone, state your first and last name and address for the record. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Axelrod? Start there.
David Axelrod, Toscana South. I would like to discuss today with you, with the commission, the board policy that was passed in October, I think October 3rd was the second reading, regarding on how boards should be looked at. This is in the face of the number of board vacancies that have occurred and will occur as of the end of the year. First, I want to remind the commission that everybody who serves on the boards are volunteers. We get paid $25 per meeting, which may pay for me and my wife to go to McDonald's. The requirements that you have put in recently regarding background checks, I think is ludicrous. If you live in Highland Beach and you're willing to serve, that should be enough. There's interviews by the commission and the board chairman. That should also be enough. You shouldn't have to go through backgrounds. Although I will say this, Palm Beach County, I believe, requires a financial statement on a yearly basis. So that's also covered. Secondly, this policy of allowing applications only in January and July will not accomplish anything except to leave boards half empty. An example on the planning board right now is somebody who we know will resign on December 31st. You will then not look at the opening until sometime in January. The commission may review it in February, which means that space will remain open for probably 2 to 3 months. Likewise, on some of the other boards, for example, code enforcement, you have 3 empty spots right now. According to your policy, you will not be allowed to look at those, except in an emergency, which I would consider that an emergency. I believe the policy states that you will not be allowed to look at this until January, which is 3 months down the line. So I think you actually have boards right now with less than a quorum available, and they can't be filled until next year. Finally, I currently have served on the planning board for 4 years. I'm a retired gynecologist. One of the other members is a jewelry corporation owner. With your theory on what should happen now, neither of us would have qualified to meet the board. I can tell you I'm 4 years now, I'm on the planning board. You should allow time for people to come on and learn the system. You have enough time with rotation of the board that the board is basically there. And, for example, let's even go to code enforcement. You learn the code. Takes time. Planning. You learn what the board does. You can appeals. Appeals, you have to learn one word: hardship. That's the only word you have to know when you go on the appeals board. Yet you're putting into effect that you're going to sit here and you have done it, grill people to see if they're qualified. Maybe that's why you still have 6 or 7 or 8 empty spots on the board. Finally and lastly, there's the situation of the 3 meetings, 3 meetings of missed and you're out. With all the respects, I have sat here over the last 2 years or so and seen members of the commission who have missed more than 3 meetings because of sickness, and they basically aren't thrown off the commission. However, the threat to the boards are that if you miss 3 meetings, you're going to go off. We have somebody right now that you people may have been notified of, you will be notified of, somebody on my board who missed 3 meetings. At the last meeting, I moved to change the minutes to a word called excused absences. The excused absences should be a word that should be in your policy. If somebody misses a meeting because their brother is terminal or very sick and he's up in New York, that person shouldn't be thrown off the board. Okay? So I know later on this meeting, you're going to discuss shrinking the boards, disbanding boards. I think you have to look at the policy and loosen up. The policy you've put in is a little too powerful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Resnick, you had a question? A comment?
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Paul Resnick, Bramer Isle, Boca Highlands. I come to you today to leave you a couple of pictures and ask you for some help for the building department, code enforcement in particular, of a problem we have at Bramer Isle. I'm going to pass, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a second and pass out some pictures. There's 3 pictures here in the so-called North Marina. The South Marina is owned and controlled by Boca Highlands. The North Marina, all of the slips, all of the docks are owned by individual owners, most of whom live in the Grand Cape portion. We have a visual problem over there that has been going on for somewhere between 12 and 18 months. One of the owners, one day a pile driver came in and put up 10 piles in front of a home, and they were, I'd estimate 30 feet high when he left. They stayed there for months, and then when I representing, as a member of the code, not as a member of the code enforcement board, but the neighbors come to me because they know I'm on code enforcement, and I went to the building department. I asked them if they could do something, and what happened is they cut the pilings down to about 15 feet above the water and lined them with wood along the top. This is supposed to be a boat lift someday. I've been in contact with the building department, code enforcement, asking for help, and basically they say this guy has put in plans for a boat lift, and every time his time is almost up, he changes the plans and he gets another 6 months. And can I take a second to just pass these?
Sure.
Look at them. One turn sideways is the view from my apartment up higher. So what I'm asking, the damn thing is an eyesore. We know that when the guy wants to bring in a boat, no matter how big it is, there's nothing we can do about it. If you look at this thing, you'll swear it's at least a 50-foot boat going to go on something that size. That's okay. All we would like is closure on this matter. Please help us get something done so we don't look at wood pilings standing that have been there for about 18 months. I'm done unless any of you have any questions.
No, actually, all right, Peggy, Councilor Simon.
Yes, thank you. Yes, sir, hi. Do the plans show, is this supposed to have a cover? Is that why there are, I guess these are 2x4s, or is that why there's a? Oh, is this the gentleman? Okay.
I can't answer questions
And
like
then
that.
why, yeah, all right.
That was done just to keep the pilings in place. I'm not the owner, I'm one of the neighbors to the owner.
But, excuse me, you have to state your name and where you live.
Good afternoon, Lou Mazzella. I live at 1009 Grand Court in the Boca Highland community. I'm actually here also, and thank you, Your Honor, I was able to go back and meet Mary. The wood was done in order to hold the pilings because they were starting to move around, and that's why he did it. Originally, that piece, I'm going to borrow Kathleen's, that piece was originally slated for in here. The gentleman's property is almost like an S, the way it goes on the water, and originally it was slated for here. Our HOA denied it and wanted him to put it out there, which is, I'm here not for Mr. Resnick's reasons. I'm here because I own the slips back here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Myself, the other owners, it has made it incredibly difficult for us, especially when there are boats in the slips, to get by. It's made it so tight now that we have trouble getting by, and if you keep it in this spot, you're actually devaluing all of the slips back here in the bottom part of the lagoon, because we're not going to be able to put in bigger boats. And why it's not here on the east-west access where it should be, because he has more room here than he does on the northwest, the north-south access. It really should be on the east-west point, not on the north-south point. You pass them out, yeah, pass them out,
I'm
Kathleen.
Kathleen Kennedy. I'm next door on 1005 Grand Court, and I did make some copies, but I didn't know there were so many of you, so I'll give you what I have. I'm going to put that one up.
All right, you gonna hold that one?
If you don't mind.
We'll spread them around.
Good.
All right.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to say I have not talked to these other two people in Grand K, but I am very happy to have them on the same path as me.
Okay, I have another question. First of all, I believe we have a, go ahead, yes, sir.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
If you can just get my bearings, we actually looked at a house in here 20-some years ago, 23 years ago. Didn't buy it, sorry. It wasn't finished. Anyway, where is this exactly? This is where the homes, the single-family homes are located?
If you look, and it would be.
I just can't get a grip on where this
If you look at
turn
the outline
is.
red property on the
Oh.
first page, That's his property. If you look across from there,
Oh,
you'll
okay,
see
I got
the
it. Oh, I
slips
see.
that are owned by mostly residents of Grand K.
Okay, wow,
So-
that is tight.
My survey is on the second, I'm the lot next door. I bought the property with a beautiful view of the intercoastal, and since it's been obstructed by hedges, and I understand a proposal of an 8-foot wall, I recently put my property on the market. I had a buyer come with a boat, and they turned away from my property because there is no access to my backyard. And I don't believe the 5 residents to the left of me have any notice or understanding of what's happened. The pictures that you have are not showing, here's the big visual of his property. You can see he owns maybe 35 feet here. I measured on Papa, which if you want to pull up, it might be easier to see. To the left of that, you can see the pilings. It appears that this piling here, which was originally slated for, I guess, 10 feet, is exceeding 12 feet. Additionally, it appears that it's actually on my property. So what once was a lovely view is now of huge pilings and untrimmed, unmaintained hedges, ficus of that, evasive kind of quality. There is space on his property, as you see here, more here, and it's certainly 122 feet I measured on this side. So why a lift is here in the middle of the basin, you can see the piling lines up in the middle of this basin, and once you have a boat where this green outline is, there is absolutely less than maybe 6-7 feet clearance. So I have 45 feet on the water, now I can't use, and I can't sell my property. I have been in here numerous times, I've gone the route of attorneys. I don't know what to do. I'm looking for some kind of remedy because this has been going on, and I don't have the kind of money to burn. I bought this as an investment to sell for a profit, and now I'm sitting here today begging for you guys to intervene because it's destroyed my value, my biggest investment,
And your quality of life.
completely.
I have another question.
Okay, wait, I think there's some questions here.
Can
Okay,
I just
Okay.
finish?
wait.
Do we
Wait, Peggy
have-
would like to finish her statement.
You've made the mention that these are 12-foot pilings. Were 12-foot pilings permitted?
No, it was, from what I understand, I've heard a lot of different versions. There
Yeah.
was no permit, then there was a permit, it's expired, but the permit was for 10 feet, and he's gone to 12 feet. I haven't gone out and measured. It appears to me to be larger than that. It's massive, and I do think that piling, if you refer to the last page, this is my property here. It appears that that piling is over, it's not only in the middle of the canal, but it appears to be on my side.
Well, first of all, we have codes that disallow impeding a waterway. And so right off the bat, that is both an Army Corps and a town code.
And I've
Right off the
contacted-
bat, that would make this disqualified from being, we couldn't get our little boat through there, it doesn't look
can't.
like.
I can barely
So-
get my
okay.
boat through
Right,
there.
so
Okay.
that's a
I
problem.
can't have a boat. I'm not that good of a driver.
Sure.
I cannot have a boat.
Okay,
And secondly, I'm just wondering then if it was permitted for 10-foot and 12-footer and why we wouldn't be red flagging that whole thing if
Well, it
it's
should
not
have been red
permitted.
flagged from the beginning, and none of us have ever received any notice that there was such a thing
okay.
going in.
Right,
Excuse
so
me, I'm
those would be
sorry.
my
Yeah.
2 points of
Okay,
question.
the time is up, the 5 minutes, and you didn't finish what you were saying, Paul. But, all right, if any of the other commissioners, you can have a seat, but want to make your comments.
All right.
But honestly, before we start, this is an
This
issue
is a
really
major
we have to
problem.
give to Marshall, and Marshall has to investigate this.
Okay.
And that's where we have to be. The only thing I would suggest is Marshall will investigate it, he'll get the answers.
Evelyn was-
And I would like the people that are here, Mr. Resnick and the other couple, make sure we have their name, okay? And we'll go to, just for comments, brief comments.
It's a comment. I suggest that while Marshall is investigating our ordinances, we send this to the planning board, because if we do not have an ordinance that says you cannot impinge your neighbor's use of their property, then we need one.
That's right. You can't block a waterway.
You can't, well, but you can't block somebody's driveway either when you decide to do something. So there are a lot of instances where you would impinge on somebody else's use, and we need something to cover that. And if we have something to cover it, let's enforce it.
We do
Wait.
have that ordinance, and as
Okay.
well the Army Corps ordinance. takes
Commissioner
effect.
Donaldson, want to make a quick comment?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to actually mention what the mayor has already mentioned. It sounds like we need more information that really, we're not really in a position to hold a hearing here. So I would suggest more information is needed on how we got to this point and the next best step, whether it's an enforcement issue or a lack of a planning board review, that we figure out what it is and let the town manager move it in the direction it needs to go in.
Okay, Commissioner Seidman?
Yes, since we have Mary McKinney here, could she weigh in just with what she knows about the case?
Okay.
I just recently have heard of this situation. I know that the property owner at 1006 Grand Court applied for a revision to a previously approved boat lift. This whole file goes back, it's like this big, goes back to 2016. I've now gathered all the files, and I've heard from each one of these individuals separately. They didn't even know that they were contacting me, but they have an issue with the proposed size of the boat and the orientation of a proposed boat lift there. So we just started looking into it. It appears that he put in pilings that he did not have a permit for.
Oh,
And so we have to take it from there to do what we
Yeah.
need to do about that. We'll have to write up a whole summary of it. It'll take a little while because we have other things going on too, but we understand that this is a big issue for these individuals, and we'll put it together and give you all the facts.
okay, but honestly, I don't think it's a commission issue. I think this has to be dealt with, maybe even with the code enforcement. Okay, Peggy just handed me Section 30-68 Supplemental District Regulations. In waterways not regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, docks and mooring structures shall not extend into any waterway more than 5 feet. So, all right, but I think it's not a commission issue. This is going to Marshall at this point.
I got it. As Mary said, we got wind of this last week. We're looking into it. Those provisions that are just read are for things that you don't need Army Corps permit. Once you go beyond 5 feet, like we always say, we ask for that permit before we take you to the planning board. So for those that are out there wanting to do boat docks in the future, that is why, and I know Mary's very vigilant at it, saying you're going to have your permits from the federal government before you come see our planning board. So we're going to get to the bottom. We'll pull all of the pieces together. I believe there is a stop work order on the property currently. So we'll report back to you with all the details and keep the residents informed and keep the planning board in the loop, and we'll move forward with this.
Before we move on, Vice Mayor Bobby, you had no comments, if you want to say
No,
something?
no comments. I think actually what Marshall just summarized is perfect.
Okay, all right. Okay, anyone else? Diane Matherman, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Diane Matthewman, 1109 Bel Air Drive. I'm here again to discuss the parking. I know that there's an ordinance that's going to be discussed, and I don't even know why we're still having this issue. If you look at the last sentence of Florida Statute 316.002, it says that a city or town like Highland Beach cannot pass an ordinance that conflicts with the state uniform traffic laws contained in Florida Statute Chapter 316. That would mean that Highland Beach could not pass an ordinance, for example, that conflicts with the other statute. It makes it unlawful for a person to obstruct a public street in any manner. And that's what's happening when cars are parking on the narrow streets of Bel Air Drive. Highland Beach can prohibit stopping, standing, or parking on side streets, which are streets under the jurisdiction of Highland Beach. The town can restrict the use of streets, and Highland Beach can erect no parking signs in certain areas under that statute as well. The simple answer seems to be that the town place no parking signs in certain areas that are problems and enforce them. Some areas like Bel Air Drive and Russell may need such signs while others may not. The reason our street needs these signs is because we have direct access to the beach. You will walk 30 seconds and you're at the beach. Now, recently, the police department has been enforcing the Florida statute, and there's no parking on our street, and it's wonderful, no problems. There are plenty of parking spaces in each individual unit's condominium association for people to park. The problem is people get lazy. So if somebody's parking in the driveway and somebody parks behind them, the first person has to be inconvenienced to move their car out. That's not a reason to park on the street. So I just hope that we can all agree on this and continue writing tickets that park illegally on the street. Not here and there, not some days and other days. It has to be consistent every day. If there is a car that is not commercial, not your pool man, your lawn man, we're not looking to ticket everybody. We just don't want the beachgoers parking on the street, coming back home, leaving their trash in front of my house, changing their wet bathing suits in front of my house. It's been working very well recently. We just need to maintain it. Thank you. Have a
I
good
thank
day.
you very much. Okay, anyone? Oh, yes, Mr. Hillman. I know that, but she started reading it. I let her read it.
Good afternoon, Doug Hillman, Dalton Place. I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Axelrod's comments about the boards. You all know from previous comments how strongly I feel about the boards. I think they're critically important to the town, second only to the commission. And having this wait period to fill board positions is counter to that feeling. God forbid we had so many vacancies on a board that we couldn't even get a quorum, then the board couldn't even operate. And it demonstrated today how important they are. This terrible issue that's happening here in the canal is referred to the board as it should have been, which is terrific. Having this wait period, I think, is really a fool's errand for us, and we ought to rethink that. If there is an opportunity to fill a board position that's available, we should jump on it. It's hard enough to get people that want to fill these board positions. Second to that, at the last session, we were talking about researching the opportunity for people to call in for board meetings beyond just in the event that they were ill. And I was wondering what we have found on that. Do we have a report? Is there any information to be shared?
Yes, we looked into that. So the ruling on the state statute has to be an extenuating circumstance, and it's depending on how far we want to push that. I think it's going to be a public policy discussion when we bring this back. If that is truly the way the commission wants to do with a remote group, I don't know if it's one-off, if you're sick or this or that, or if we want to total mobility where you never have to be here and you participate. And I think those are some of the bigger public policy discussions, and it's not on the next couple of agendas, but it's something that we surely can tackle in the short term if this issue of board appointments. And I just recall for Mr. Axelrod as well is that we did insert that provision in that policy that says we can recruit at any time for board appointments and advertise. And we currently have been kind of open and just taking anybody that's interested in coming in. So we're not slowing the process down at the current time. There's a little bit of a drought. So we'll push again and do that. So.
Okay. So we can recruit any time. Are we going to fill at any time?
If you want to, on the urgency of that effect, yes, the commission can direct that. Again, the policy I would think is more of a guideline, and it did have, or as directed by the commission. That was, I know the commission spent a lot of time by giving themselves that flexibility a little bit. So should we find ourselves, the policy's being tested immediately. This is great. We have the ability to exercise that option and recruit. But anybody watching that's out there, please apply. We don't turn anybody away at the counters, this and that. So just come on in and make application. And again, if there's an issue with the background checks, just to let people know, that's basically really we're looking for, if you've got convictions, active convictions on your record. We're not looking to see where you've been, who you've worked for. We're not doing like an employment background check. We're just looking for criminal convictions Are you currently in court for, brandishing a weapon in a public space? Those type of things we want to make sure we have a check on, but we're not doing this full in-depth analysis into your backgrounds.
Okay. Following up on the call-in, I think at our last discussion, it was, first there had to be a quorum. So call-ins were only available when there was a quorum. And it was open-ended in terms of the number of quorums. We didn't discuss that, the number of call-ins. But the opportunity for the call-in was so that we could broaden the field. We only have a third of the population that lives here full-time. So 2/3 of the population isn't available to serve on any of these boards. So once we allow the call-ins, we then opened up the field to really 3 times the number of people that we have here. And there are a number of very, very qualified people that would be interested in serving on these boards, but we can't tap into them. That's what the idea was for the call-ins. So if we're going to pursue the call-ins, which I hope we will, I think we can tap into some very, very interesting people that would love to serve. So I urge the commission to move on that. Any thoughts, discussion?
Mayor, may I make-
Okay. Before we do that,
May I make a comment on this?
yes, certainly.
So I echo both of what Dr. Axelrod and Mr. Hillman are saying. One of the reasons why we did the 2 times a year was to put people on the bench, if you will, so we could actually get people when there are no spots to say, I would like to be on the planning board if there is a spot. So it actually gave us a chance to hopefully stack some people, so as soon as someone leaves, we can call someone up immediately. So that was the purpose of it. It was never meant to slow the process down. It was meant to speed the process up. So, and we do have it in there where we can take applications and call people up at any point. And I agree with you on the electronic ability to call in. That would be nice.
Great.
Yes, Peggy Simon.
Yes, just to further what the Vice Mayor's saying, this came up when we had one board with one opening and 5 persons had applied, and other boards had no one applying. So the point of it was to try to spread the wealth of the board people applying. But now that we have a problem, we will certainly revisit it.
Yes,
I
Commissioner
think
Davis.
that we wind up with a problem here because we have so few residents. You would have the same advisory boards in a city like Delray and Boca, and you've got multiples of people to choose from. We don't have that option, so I think that we have to broaden the way we look at things. And
Well, my suggestion again would be to have this on an agenda to, discuss it again. Yeah.
At least the remote portions, we probably need a policy on that because
We need a policy.
there are some minor legal entanglements that Glenn had kind of laid out when we started that discussion. We want to make sure we don't traverse in where
Okay.
it's completely remote because there still had to be a physical quorum present. So we just probably have to define that a little bit, and we may, be going down some new paths that other communities haven't gone down. So we would just be a little bit cautious as we move in that direction.
So can we put it on the agenda?
Sure. Yeah, I said yeah.
Sure,
Thank
we
you.
will, yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. Okay, and I see there's another young lady who would like to speak. Please state your name.
Susan Ammerling Stern, Dalton Place. And I'm one of the people who put my name in for being on the Natural Resources Advisory Board. And I had a meeting with the chairperson last spring, and then I didn't have a meeting with any of you folks, but I spoke with each one of you individually at the end of one meeting might have been in May or so, and I haven't heard anything since. I haven't had a meeting with you. I'm not on the committee. I see that there is an opening. So what happens with my application?
Go ahead.
We have
I
it.
mean, if you want
we
people, you
have it,
have
yeah.
to follow through.
Yep, so what Linelda was saying, you've been gone for several months, so we usually want people back to interview.
I let the office know that I was back.
Yeah.
Also, I could have met with everybody in May, And I did speak to each one of you individually when you were here. So I thought that was speeding something up, especially when you need people on these committees. It makes it difficult. I mean, it's okay if you don't want me.
No,
But-
it's
No,
not
but I mean,
personal.
you don't, you have to have a follow-through. And I don't mean to be disruptive, but it's just, it's embarrassing. That's all. Thank you.
Okay,
Marshall, may I ask a question?
sure.
Was she interviewed by the chair, and did we get a recommendation from the chair?
Yes, she was
Okay.
interviewed. She actually came to a meeting, as she said, but she was away, and you all wanted to wait till she come back to be in your presence. But she did
So she's
speak
back.
to
She's
each one
going to
of
be
you.
on one of the next meetings.
Sounds like a
Yes.
good time to pick it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you would be on the next meeting, yeah. But originally, okay. You can't, it has to be on an agenda. Well, I'll tell, okay, John?
I'm John Ross. I live in Casarina, and my allergies have kicked in since the temperature went down. So the commission, once again, is a roadblock. As you were for the permitting and other routine businesses that you have no reason to be involved in. There is no reason why this lady cannot be appointed today. You can add things to the agenda. You had an opportunity before the presentation. You can add them now. Okay? If, heaven forbid, she applies to move a wall, by the time you guys act on it, that wall will have fallen down under its own power. It's not efficient to put every piece of town business through the commission. It isn't, and it's not standard. You have boards, you have a reason for boards, but nobody can discern what those reasons are. You passed a budget that your financial advisory board had never seen. What are they there for? Well, nobody knows, and that's one of the reasons that people don't apply. Teleconferencing has been around since 1975, so it's hardly groundbreaking to use it, okay? About $14 a month it'll cost you for a 100-person capable video conferencing cloud-based system, okay? To change subjects for a second, thanks Peggy Gossett-Seidman for the information. So many of the swamps, most of them, I guess, are owned by the county. Mangrove swamps have to be maintained. They have to be channeled and unmucked, which is not a scientific word. I don't know what the removal of muck means, but mangroves will die and be replaced by trees that are sitting below the waterline if they're not maintained. So as long as you're going to the county to talk to them, you might talk to them about the responsibilities that they have as the landowner to clear the channels that exist in the mangroves so that they can thrive and do their job of filtering the water, providing a habitat for small marine creatures, and smell a lot less, all of which are accomplished by that. Thanks.
Thank you. Tim?
Tim Burnage, 4505 South Ocean Boulevard. I was rather surprised to hear the residents here with the dockage and boating problem, and nothing's ever come before the Code Enforcement Board. We have a system that should have addressed this. If there's code violations, they should be addressed, and they should be brought before the Code Enforcement Board. And as chairman of that board, I look forward to hearing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Okay, then we'll continue with our meeting. Speaking of boards and committees and announcements as well. Board vacancies and interviews. Board of Adjustment and Appeals Board, 3 vacancies. 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending January 3rd, 2020, and 2 upcoming vacancy for a 3-year terms. Code Enforcement Board, 3 vacancies. 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending July 1, 2021. 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending August 1st, 2021. And 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending May 28th, 2022. Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board, 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending April 30th, 2021. The Planning Board, we have 1 upcoming vacancy for a 3-year term. We have upcoming meetings and events. Planning Board meeting, December 12th, 2019, 9:30 a.m. Town Commission regular meeting, December 17th, 2019, 1:30 p.m. Board action report from the Planning Board. Would you like to make a... Wait, you want to stand up and... Right.
I would just say this. First of all, we had a meeting last week. We approved 2 boat lifts. I don't understand why this has not reached us yet, except for the fact that I'm gathering that he keeps changing his plans. So I think, Mary, are we going to discuss this on December 12th? Is that you mentioned there was one that was different one? Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we should try to get this, if you can work it out, can try to get this on the Planning Board. Other than that, really, there's no other report. Everything went fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're up to number 9, ordinances and resolutions. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to ask our attorney, are we allowed to add things to the agenda midway through the agenda?
Yes. I mean, you are allowed, if the board votes procedurally to say we want to amend the agenda to add something on an agenda, you can do that and you can vote on it.
Thank you. In that case, I move that we have the interview portion of appointing to the Natural Resource Board, since our applicant is here now.
I second.
All right.
I second that. Common
Okay.
sense.
Okay, we need to...
Do we have any paperwork to review again for this individual?
If
So
you
we
want to
can
wait
have-
a little bit, we can pull something together. We don't
And do
have
it a
it
little bit
prepared
later
for
in the
you to
meeting.
review.
Can we make the motion so it's at the end of the agenda, so that way we can at least get the application and ask proper questions?
Sure. Susan, is that okay with you?
Okay.
Fine, then
Well, we
let's amend
appreciate
it to,
Okay.
at the point in this agenda when we get the paperwork.
Okay. I mean, all these years... Yeah, I know. Well, because usually when you have it on the agenda, other people also get to see it in the community. But that's fine. I mean, I don't see a problem with it. But I was under the impression that at the beginning of our meeting, we add and we can delete. This is the first time we've ever done something like that. So you're saying at any time we can add anything?
I mean, at any time, someone can make a motion to say, look, you know what, I would like to add something to the agenda, and yes, you can do that. The more appropriate time is at the beginning of the meeting where we have it in place, but legally, there is not something that would stop a member of this body from making a motion at some point to try to add something to the agenda. And, and as long as there is an approval, majority vote to say, yes, we'll do it, then you're allowed to do that.
Okay, because it hasn't been that protocol in the past. We always do it at the beginning. But that's fine, and I think it's important we all learn, and everybody knows we can.
We have to vote on that motion.
Go ahead. Yeah. Lynella?
So, Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett Simon?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
and Mayor Zelnikow.
Yes.
For clarity of the record, that is going to be item 12F.
12F.
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking for it also.
Let's call
So
that
no,
12G.
Yeah, I was going to say, there is a 12F, yeah.
There is
Sorry.
a 12F.
Yes,
Yeah,
excuse
so
me,
it's
12G.
Oh, so it's 12G. 12G appointment. Okay, we will learn something new every day. Okay. All right, resolution number 19-030R, amendment number 1 to Florida Department of Transportation District 4 Landscape Inclusive Maintenance Memorandum Agreement. I'm going to refer this over to the town manager, Labadie.
Yeah, so we have a ongoing maintenance agreement with FDOT for all work or improvements within FDOT facilities vis-a-vis the right-of-way. The Benjamin family have proposed, and we've approved their plans to construct items within those FDOT facilities, so we have to amend that maintenance agreement. I've had a brief conversation with our attorney, and he makes a point that I don't know what our historical practice is if the Benjamins sign an agreement with us, saying that they will assume that responsibility and indemnify us for whatever issues that may be borne by those improvements that they have. So all of a sudden, not that they're not going to, by practical nature, most people take care of their improvements, but what if they don't? Then we're gonna go out and start cutting their grass and the road right of way because FDOT would hold us responsible. So in essence, we should hold them responsible, indemnify us. Should somebody drive off the road, crash into their improvements right on the right of way line, why are we responsible? So, or a tree or things of that nature. So I would think if we are going to move forward with the Benjamins and approve this amendment, that we condition it on a simple agreement, indemnification agreement and maintenance agreement with the individual homeowner between the town and them. And Mr. Schutt says he's got a sample that he's used for years over in other communities. We could simply take that document, have the Benjamins sign it, and release us from certain responsibilities or obligate them to take care of what they're putting in the right of way.
Okay, Commissioner David, any comments?
Marshall, does that mean that every time somebody puts up a house like Mr. Rothberg, or there's one going up down the street from him, that we have to amend this agreement?
You would think. They're amending this one. I've got our code enforcement officer, code compliance officer is going to be reaching out to FDOT. I'll probably get Pat to reach out to FDOT to see how many of these exist. This is the first one. I mean, been here 14 months, so that I've seen, but we've had a lot of improvements in the FDOT right away. We also know down the road on our agenda, we're going to look at our own right-of-way ordinance to begin to address some of these improvements, drainage, driveways, those types of things. So I would think they would have one for everyone, but I don't know if this one is unique or if maybe they got a new person working at FDOT that's doing what they were supposed to have done. I don't know. I will try to get that information and all of that history of these type of agreements if we have them and kind of catalog them so we know. But yes, anytime, as I would read it, anytime there's an improvement in the road right away, I don't think they make you do it for a driveway. I think it has to be something a little more expansive that you're doing to trigger it, not just a simple driveway, but or a mailbox, if you will.
Well, then I would suggest that when somebody gets a permit to construct a new house, that we make the application process then so that they don't have to be held up and we can get it through. Just do it as part of the construction permits that they need?
Sure. Absolutely, yeah.
Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
Are we at a discussion point or?
Yeah, we're at the discussion about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
If I could, then I want to make certain I understand what we're proposing to do. This is strictly just for this property, because I noticed there's some other background information included, but the action today is just strictly for that property. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, we're amending I think ours was 2017, is our maintenance agreement. So if FDOT has any problem with anything that's been permitted, they come to us. I don't know that I want to put Pat and the Public Works guys out taking care of people's landscaping and things in the road right away that have been, even if we say it's okay and we've approved it, do we want to be maintaining it? So that's the only new caveat. But yes, it's just for the Benjamin property. That's like, so it's like an amendment just for their piece of property only.
Okay. My sense of this is that sooner or later, we're going to be dealing with this at a much different level. Historically, we've not been very good about dealing with plantings in the right-of-way. You can see that as you drive down A1A. You can see that from the pushback we got from people during the referendum who were concerned about the landscape they had perhaps illegally put in the right-of-way. There's a considerable amount of vegetation, landscaping that we're going to have to give really careful thought to. So that's why I asked the question about this property. While we're not going to get into this on a general nature, I think this is going to come back as a topic, and it's pretty apparent from what we've seen. But again, we haven't been doing what we should have been doing. So we're going to have to play a little catch-up here, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, thank you. I do question why other residences are included in our packet. Is that just as far as what's been done in the past? I didn't understand that.
I'm looking as we talk.
Okey-doke. Okay, and then secondly, it's very hard to read. I mean, a mouse couldn't even read this, so.
Those are their plans.
I understand, but I just wonder if we could maybe have them blown up larger or even on the 8.5 by 11, if it could take up the whole paper in the future, because I can't really read them as they are. My two questions I have are, the right-of-way is really this is where we're hoping to put in and drain and include the right-of-way in the swales. So I'm not sure why we're planting in the right-of-way in the easement. I also know the other purpose of it is for vehicle traffic. It's an extra cushion if you have to run off the road, if there's an accident, or to avoid when you can run off the road. And as we keep planting into the right-of-way, it defeats the purpose of having a right-of-way, an easement. And I know we haven't had any control of this, but that's why there is an easement, and that's why, why are we allowing planting when we're trying to determine where the swales need repaired and try to repair the swales for the flooding? Secondly, I do know that about 5 years ago, there were plantings at the cross street of Bellito Drive and A1A that actually completely obstructed the turning point to where people couldn't see. They had to turn past the bike lane to get out and turn right or left. And FDOT came in and removed those, and they cleared it and just had them plant sod. I think Mr. Roman was involved in that in assisting, to where it completely blocked the view. So I don't understand why. It's great to improve the property with landscaping, but why can't that be done on the private side, past the 17-foot easement, and leave that as natural as it should be for an emergency swale and where's the drainage on this? Do they have a drainage plan? Is it going to drain into A1A?
Starting with the latter going to the first, yes, there's a drainage plan. We spent a lot of time. I know the planning board spent a lot of time making sure that the drainage was addressed and that was done. You could take a stand that there is no further obstructions or plantings in the road right of way. I don't know if that is probably optimal moving forward because of the types of homes and the grades on the right of way. Some plants are actually good. They absorb the water within and kind of help with the facilitating of the conveyance and absorption or infiltration of the stormwater. So some of that can be good. We just have to be careful. And I don't know if we really have a real detailed landscape standard and what you can or can't do because we don't have a right-of-way ordinance. So I think this is something we are probably going to be tackling. I think Commissioner Donaldson said, I think it's something we're going to be looking in the long term. We're going to have to figure out what this is for us because it could become problematic to do it. But yeah, we could say no. I mean, that's always an option, but we haven't. They did accommodate, at least for the drainage piece of it. But yeah, we'll have to, provide some of that guidance maybe in the future, maybe some guidelines we can put in through the planning process. So when they come to the planning board, we could put out some generalized standards that we want to make sure things aren't, the amount of obstruction or use of that right of way is limited.
And also our codes call for xeriscaping and using native plants, which we haven't enforced in the past. So I would think we would want to start enforcing that. Just last week, the state recommended that persons go back to full native landscaping, including, sorry to say, but palm trees are not really native. And the live oaks and many other plants are the preferred vegetation, which assists with drainage, which assists with growth control, and that and hold up better in storms, which is why they were here in the first place. So I'm going to have to look at a larger set of plans, which I didn't have time to do yesterday, but it's just hard for me to say yes to installing all that they have outlined here.
You already have said yes.
Yes. I understand.
Okay.
I understand, but I'm looking forward to future plans. It's hard to understand this whole process because and what do we do? Do we grandfather in everyone who's planted everything every which way in the past?
No, can I answer her?
I don't know.
Peggy,
yes.
These particular plans were brought to us.
I know.
And we saw big ones, and we already approved them.
I'm aware of all that.
So you can't go back now and not approve them.
I'm understanding that, but my point is, going forward, what do we do when we set a precedent with this? That's my point.
Well, I don't think this is a precedent. I think really, if I'm not mistaken, the point of this is to make the homeowner or property owner primarily liable to FDOT as opposed to us being primarily liable and they being liable to us. So it kind of short circuits. If FDOT wants to go after somebody, they'll go after the property owner.
Now, I understand
That's all that this does.
Well, then we need the attorney to weigh in fully because we are not him.
Well, no, I mean, the reason that, and I was just talking to Marshall just right before the meeting started on this item, what I've done in other places where we are required, and it's always on every FDOT road there is, because FDOT will only do the agreement with the governing agency. They do not do agreements with individual property owners, so they make us responsible for the right-of-way if we want to allow, or if someone comes forward and says we want to put something in there. So the agreement basically says that they will put it in there. They have to maintain it to a certain standard. Normally it's FDOT standards or better if we have our own standards, and that we can require them to remove it at any time for whatever reason. We don't have to give a reason, but they have to remove it. If they fail to remove it, then we can remove it and we can charge them for it. And it has general language like that in the agreement that they have to sign. And that's what I was just commenting to Marshall on, is that any time that we come forward where where FDOT is looking for us to hold us accountable, FDOT will still, even with this agreement, FDOT will still come forward and just look at us. However, we will then turn around and look at the property owner and address it that way, because FDOT will always just look to us to correct the situation or if they have an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Sounds like we should have those agreements whether there are trees in place or not in place. Sounds like a good way to match assets and liabilities, so that part is good. And Dr. Axelrod, I'll ask you for sure. I think I understand this, but these are the plans we already reviewed, and you approved, and we approved, correct? Yes. Great. I have no further questions.
Yes. On this particular issue, we have no choice. But everyone has to understand that there will be bike lanes in Highland Beach. There will be construction of the road in Highland Beach. And I'm going to ask Marshall, what is that going to be, 2021? They're going to...
2024 into 2025. They
It's gonna
start
be a big
design
project.
21, 22, then they program it for dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though we've given permission and we're allowing people with their shrubs on the right-of-way, it's going to all be torn up. But I wonder if people really understand that. There will be bike lanes here.
The town put in 8 palm trees.
I was going to get to that. Okay. The town didn't. The town did not plant those trees. I believe those palm trees that were planted came from the county. Am I right?
Is it the county did it?
I believe.
Because when we came back, because it happens Toscana did not get any of the palm trees. and we came
Neither
back
did
to the
Regency
town,
Highland.
And we were given the
Was the
reason
state grant.
for it was X, Y, and Z, but that came from the town. So I don't, well, bottom
All
line
right,
is.
it was donated.
There is, no matter what, there is trees that are governmentally controlled and should be the government should be responsible for whether.
Sure, we do. We do the ones that came on that state grant. We if they fall down, we're under agreement to
There
replace them.
there was a signed agreement with, you have to look that up. It's an old one. I remember because we went through it. Yeah. I always felt the town should be responsible because some people don't maintain those palm trees. You have palms hanging down, but the agreement was that the owners, the homeowners at that time, were supposed to be responsible for the maintenance of, am I right? Don was here. This was a long time ago. You remember, I'm here a long time. Yes, the agreement that the town signed at that time, it was a maintenance agreement that the homeowner was going to maintain the palm trees. I've always been of the notion the town should do it because some people take care of it. Pat sees what goes on there. Some people take care of it, some people don't. Now, Pat knows the answer. When a palm tree dies, I believe the county replaces it, or do we? We replace it.
Only the ones that we planted.
Wait.
Microphone.
Oh, yeah. Because I remember having this discussion many years ago. And I thought it should have been the town that did it.
The homeowners are responsible for maintaining, as in trimming and that, but if one dies, only the trees that were in the project that we are responsible for. If the trees weren't in that multiple tree project that we did, then the homeowner's responsible for it. But I have plans of all the trees that we planted during that, and we will replace them if they die, but the homeowner is still responsible to maintain it because that's part of our ordinance in the right of way.
Yeah, and that gets a little sloppy. Some people do it, some people don't. The
Correct.
walkers are complaining they're walking and the big palm falls on their head, or you could be driving and a palm can come off. I think we have to look back into that agreement. Maybe it should be changed. I always felt the town should be responsible for it.
We do if it's an imminent danger or if they fall, the guys will pick them up on their milk runs. So.
Yeah, it was part of a beautification grant that we got. We put in 200,000, they supplied 200,000. That's where the tree project came.
But there was an agreement.
Yeah, well, obviously, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, there was.
Maybe Linelda can pull that up one day. But, yeah, but I do, I mean, in this particular case, and we have to move on, is we have to, this is something we all approved. The planning board approved it, but I think the planning board should be cognizant of the fact we have landscape codes that have never been followed in the entire time I've been involved with the town. And we are going to have, there's no doubt, everything is going to be dug up. So the people that are going to be putting these plants in maybe don't realize that. But it will be dug up, there will be bike lanes, there will be widening of the road. So if I were them, I really wouldn't do it. But that's something I think your planning board has to really be cognizant of. Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be doing that. Anyway, at this time, public comments are now open. If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand on this topic. No? Okay. There being no, you did speak already, didn't you? Yeah, okay. There being no further comments, the public comments are now closed. Are there any other discussions on this, or shall we just go on to a motion to adopt the resolution?
Mayor, I'd make a motion to adopt resolution number 19030R pending receipt of indemnification.
Second.
Okay.
Commissioner David? Excuse me, Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
And Mayor Zellniker?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're up to B. Resolution number 19-031R, amending resolution number 18-011R, budget amendment. And I refer this to the town manager.
Okay, so this is what we did last year. This is, if you will, a balancing change order, if you will. So any accounts that were overspent, we take money from accounts that were underspent to balance. So we close a balanced budget. With that also is a revenue recognition, additional revenue recognition in the building department of $60,000 too. So this just basically balances it. It's not closeout of the fiscal year. It is just balance, the last step required by statute to balance the budget within 60 days. And that's what you have. You did the same one last year. You're doing this one. This is just moving monies around to make sure the balance budget, no accounts were overspent.
Okay, and Commissioner David, any comments?
Seems to be pretty straightforward to me. You're not looking for any more money. It's just putting the numbers where they need to be. So I'm in favor of this.
Commissioner Donaldson?
No comments.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
No comments, thank you.
And Vice Mayor?
No comments.
And I have no comments. This is a procedural matter. Okay, we need a vote, please.
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. This time, public comments are now open. If anyone has something to say about this, or if you don't understand it, please ask now. Okay? Being no further comments, the public comments are now closed, and we'll have our vote. And we need a motion first to adopt it.
Mayor, motion to adopt resolution number 19031R, amending 18011R budget amendment.
Second it.
Town clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Zellniker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes.
And Mayor Zellniker?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're up to C, resolution number 19-032R, Florida Department of Transportation Agreements. And I refer this item to Town Manager Labadie.
Okay, I kind of had a little bit of a preview with the planning board, but this is another step that FDOT needs completed so I can sign permits and construction agreements for the crosswalk enhancement project. So you have to authorize me to sign those documents.
Okay, Commissioner David?
No comment.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
No comment.
Commissioner Donaldson?
I'll endorse the comment in here that they have been working collectively and tirelessly.
And Vice Mayor?
No comment.
And I will also add that this has been a long time coming, a long time, and I'm happy to say Marshall's been able to do it. And thank you to Peggy also for getting us some money, hopefully, to add to it.
Hopefully.
Okay. Okay, and at this time, public comments are now open. Does anyone have any comments about giving our manager the full authority to sign these agreements? Okay?
When you say it like that, just to know that I'm still governed by the procurement procedure, so I can't sign off on million-dollar projects.
No,
You
we
have to
know
do
that.
Okay.
Okay. No comments. We will continue. They are now closed, the public comments. And we'll move on. Any other discussions before we vote? No? Okay, I need a motion to adopt the resolution of 19032R.
I move that we adopt resolution 19-032R.
I second.
Okay, Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
And Mayor Zellniker?
Yes,
Motion
happy
carries.
yes. It's a happy yes for crosswalk lighting. Yay! Thrilled. John, you should be jumping up and down. You've only worked on it how long? Yeah, okay. Consent agenda, none. Unfinished business, none. New business. Approve and authorize the mayor to execute a general release with Waste Management, Inc., for and in consideration of $150,000 for roadway pavement damage and assigning the funds for future roadway improvements within our general fund reserves. I refer this to our town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. In November of last year, Waste Management leaked some hydraulic fluid on our side streets. One person doesn't like that in particular, and that's Pat. And he went to Waste Management and held their feet to the fire and held them accountable. And they have come up with this release. We've reviewed it with the attorney, so they're comfortable with the legal constructs and sufficiency of this, to give us $150,000 to release them from that problem. So this would allow us to receive those dollars. Again, those dollars are based on estimates that Pat derived from paving contractors. We take those dollars, we assign them within your reserves for future roadway improvements on those 3 roads. So the dollars are earmarked just for that use within the general fund.
Okay, how about Vice Mayor Bobby? We'll rotate.
No comments. This looks good to me.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Sounds good.
Commissioner David?
Oh, yes, accepted.
And Commissioner Donaldson?
I assume the damage was of the nature that it was so spread out that there's just no way to go and fix a localized problem. So we're treating this in a general way as far as compensation is concerned.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And I am happy to say thank you very much, Pat, for pursuing this and saving the town $150,000. Very good. Thank you. Okay, at this time, public comments are now open. If anyone would like to make a comment, John?
John Bowden, 3407 South Ocean Boulevard. The way you stated the thing is that all of this money would be spent for that. We get it done for $140,000. What are you going to do with the extra 10? And if it isn't all spent, you need to have that in whatever you're going to pass now.
I could? Yeah, so when you assign it in your reserves, it can only be used for roadway improvements. So if, as we move forward, we fix this, fix that, again, we work out of those dollars based on approval of the commission just for that. So if we could do it for less, when we go to do it, the money stays, still, the remaining portion still remains assigned for roadway improvements. It won't be moved to cover another potential expenditure or project. It stays assigned for roadway only. So those are roadway dollars.
Okay. Public comments are now closed unless anyone else wants to say anything. No? Okay. Any further commission discussion? Anyone have any comments? Nope. Okay. We need a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the general release with Waste Management, Inc. And I need that.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 19-032R.
Wasn't that the previous resolution?
Yes, there's no resolution number on this.
This is just a general release.
It's just, it's a
Of the general release.
It's not
I
a
said
resolution.
Yeah, okay, it's a general release with Waste Management, Inc. Sorry, I read it.
I hit the wrong button, excuse me.
That's okay. Oh, I see, you're not where we are. Yeah, okay. It says, is there a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the general release with Waste Management, Inc.?
I so move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, town clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes.
And Mayor Zellniker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Happy, yes. Okay, now we're going to go to B. Approve and authorize the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement between several municipalities for Southeast Palm Beach County Resiliency Partnership. I refer this to the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had many conversations. This is, it's kind of a mouthful, but the Southeast Palm Beach County Coastal Resilience Partnership. As you can see, in 2017, a few communities got together, starting from Boca all the way up to Lake Worth. These communities got together and found that they needed to start working on this vulnerability, climate vulnerability that we have. How are we situated? Where are those vulnerabilities? What are the solutions moving forward to address those? And how do we collectively pursue those? Dealing with climate change is not done on a community by community basis, as we know. It's an area issue. While we take the brunt of, say, a hurricane or a rising tide or storm surge, we default back to our adjacent communities for refuge, if you will, and So their vulnerabilities also become our vulnerabilities and vice versa if we're not here to be structurally sound to protect that initial. So when you look at climate vulnerability, it goes both ways, and it is truly a regional issue. We were able to, kudos to the group who really did a heavy lifting, Boynton Beach, Boca, Delray, right? They really did a wonderful job. Rebecca Harvey, I have to say, and we were able to get grants from the DEP to do the initial study to bring it to this point. We have another grant on the back end for the vulnerability assessment, so that's good. So we're getting grant dollars because some of this goal and focus is that if we do it collectively, we put a plan together and work for it, we can always solicit more and more grant dollars because we will have studied, evaluated, and proposed solutions, and we can move forward collectively, which always gives you better opportunities to secure grant dollars. So the first step we have now after working through this is the intergovernmental agreement. Again, you allowed Torsivia to work on this, that law firm, and because they represent a couple communities, you released that conflict of interest. All the communities have agreed on this version, which is kind of a big undertaking to have all these attorneys agree on one form and document. And only Brian's smiling in the room. But we were here. We got an agreement that we can all agree to. All of our attorneys have done that. So once we approve this, we'll be formally part of the resiliency group for.
Sorry.
There it is. So just approve it.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay, Commissioner David, any comments?
Yes, I think we should approve it.
Okay, Commissioner Donaldson?
Marshall, a question. Are we the last ones to, how about the others? Are they all on board yet, or?
Yep, so I think Boca's approved. I think Delray is the remaining in the county. The county is going to take it on the 17th and wants to do it last. They're going to bring all of the pieces together. And then we start working on the vulnerability assessment, which will be a bigger step. There'll be a lot of workshops for the community to engage not only citizens and commissions, but also the businesses in the area. There's a lot of communication process that's involved on the assessment. So I'm excited we're here. You budgeted for it. So, and it's under budget. So this is a good solution to work collectively.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, thank you. I just wondered about the towns of Manalapan and South Palm. They're not really included in this. Is there a reason? And Gulfstreams, yes, thank you.
Yep, so a couple of the communities out, I don't really want to, some don't believe in it. I don't know, I can't address that issue. Some commissions just don't feel it's an issue for them. I'd let them. South Palm had some other issues addressing it. We reached out to Manalapan, but they just didn't want to. They're not part of that group. They could join at later dates under certain arrangements, but they can't participate in the assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
No comments.
Okay, I'm all for it. I mean, I just came back from the American Flood Coalition in Washington, D.C., and somebody has to do something, so this is a start. Okay, at this time, public comments are on this topic. John Ross.
John Ross, Casarina. To what extent could this group impose costs on Highland Beach?
They can't, and that's what a lot of the attorneys were worried about, that once this group operates, it doesn't become a quasi-independent agency that can do it. It's only for this task at this amount, and that's in the grant. So if anything has to change, it's got to go back to every single community. So our obligation is the $25,698 for the assessment, and that's what the group has to work with. We can't expand or test those boundaries for that. And we do have a grant solicited. Like I said, there was a grant in there too to backstop. That was also helpful for a couple of the communities that decided not to participate, even though they were really small cost communities.
Well, it's really not a cost issue. It's compelling cost that would be a concern. So what if they said, our plan says you put up a 50-foot seawall. Would we have to put up a 50-foot seawall?
No. This is a study and an assessment to evaluate all of the infrastructures, vulnerabilities. If you look at, I encourage everyone to read the second exhibit, Exhibit B, that you have before you, and kind of spells out what the 7 guiding principles are. And then it's to come up with tangible collective solutions. Now, if at one point it is a raise to do something exotic like that, no one's ever talked about a 50-foot seawall, but building off that, if somebody said
Holland has them.
It doesn't mean we have to go and do it. It just says this is an option to address X. So this is basically a game plan. It's almost like a comprehensive plan for addressing climate change in our region. How are we going to collectively do that? Here's the framework. Here are some suggestions and solutions. We work through all the community groups and we have workshops. So this isn't something that we're doing in isolation. We are to engage the public for those that wish to participate. And I will get that out to everybody. So please participate. And that's the intent is not to, we can't obligate ourselves anything further than this. And I mean, I guess if that's something, I can't see that happening, but you're right. There could be a solution that we don't find palatable. We don't have to pursue it in any fashion. This does not obligate us to do anything. We could then, under this structure, go and solicit grants or potentially modify that to go do something collectively if we decide, but that's not at this point.
And one other question.
Sure.
If a piece of private property were deemed vulnerable, could they be compelled, the owner be compelled to do anything as a result of the work of this? Or when I say private property, I'm not limiting that to single family, I'm adding condos too. In other words, could a very large cost be delivered to a particular condo or set of condos as a result of this?
No, it's not to do it in that fashion. If you will, on this, they would say potentially parcels could be identified as vulnerable to future climate change, this and that, and solutions should be explored to protect property, elevate structures, and that's it. It's up to then, what do you want to do with those solutions? It's not obligating us to do it, but to identify here, we're going to be vulnerable in some elements to it. I mean, we're a barrier island, so we're going to have some climate vulnerability that we all know. Some of the more straightforward ones are lift stations. Are those elevated and secured at the right elevation? There'll probably be some solutions that some of our seawalls may not be up to the certain elevation. We've been lucky that whoever created our a seawall ordinance 20 some odd years ago actually picked a pretty good number to work from. So we're generally in pretty good shape there, but there'll be some other items that not only they could say that we're vulnerable, then they have a series of solutions, should explore X, Y, and Z to strengthen your position.
And one last one.
Sure.
Since we've found out today that 20% of the landmass of Highland Beach is owned by the county, are they part of this?
Yes, the county is participating for all areas that was calculated for their little islands throughout this southeast region. So, yep.
Fine.
This is basically for information, to gather the proper information, and then the towns will do what they feel they have to do, or go to the public. That's all. All right, at this time, are there any more comments? Oh, okay, that's fine. We ask for comments after every item now. We changed it, every item we ask. Okay. There being no further comments, the public comments are now closed. My commission, any other discussions? Yeah.
Just to follow up on a couple of things. One thing is very interesting. Our town is actually more than half made up of water. So that's the nature of the barrier island, and that's who we are. The second, follow up with what Marshall touched on. These kinds of plans are sort of a first step. We don't know where all this is going to go, but the signals are out there that if you don't have this kind of plan in place, if you're not doing it now, if funds become available in the future, you're going to need to have this. So it's a matter of getting this done and standing in line. So this is a very necessary step, and it'll help move us ahead into what we need to do for the future of our little Barrier Island community here. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Seidman, any comments?
No further comment, thanks.
Vice Mayor?
No comments?
No comments. Okay, so we will continue. I need a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement between several municipalities for Southeast Palm Beach County Resiliency Partnership. So I need that.
I'll try again. A motion for the mayor to approve the interlocal agreement for the Southeast Palm Beach County Coastal Resiliency Partnership.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett-Simon?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
And Mayor Zellniker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're up to C. We're up to discussion of the draft parking ordinance and comments received from the public. I refer this item to Town Manager Labadie.
Okay, so this is going to be a fun one. It's a very popular subject, and there isn't the silver bullet that exists. So you have a history laid out in your staff analysis that we started this conversation formally in January of 19. We looked at it as a collective group in March of 19, directed it to the Code Enforcement Board, went to the Code Enforcement Board on May 14th, and then again on July 23rd, and then they recommended approval to the commission. It came back on the 30th of July back to the commission, at which point in time the commission wanted to solicit feedback from the public for those that would be directly affected by these potential modifications. And not having done this, we sent out a letter, a copy of the draft ordinance for people to provide feedback to us. Staff had believed that they had captured all of that, but there are a few items that you have in additional comments. They're generally in line with the summarized, 30-some-odd summarized, generalized comments. These additional comments generally fit into that mold, but for those individuals, there's some additional comments here. I've talked with Chief. It's a good thing Brian was here. He kind of originally drafted that with Chief, these changes and modifications. I know that we talked about some specifics at the 30th. We did not move forward implementing some of those changes that you wanted until we received the public feedback. So at this point, you got the feedback. We haven't changed the ordinance based on any of this feedback. Or bringing it back to the commission as to how do you want to move forward? Where do you want to tweak it? Where don't you? What parts you like? What parts you don't? And you'll see there's a lot of conflicting positions on this. That's why I said this should be interesting, because you want some that don't want any parking and some that want parking. So it's kind of how are you going to find that balance if there is one in there? And we'll, jump off from there. I'll help in the conversation, and we'll just go from your guidance on how you want to move forward, and then we'll set the timing based on the number of comments and changes, if we can pull off a first read now, or if we have to take a little bit more time to really groom through this and bring back yet another version with all the changes. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission.
Okay, Vice Mayor Bobby, any comments?
You always know to start with me when I got a lot of comments.
Yeah, no, it's good. We got to start somewhere.
Great. This was a really great exercise because we asked the community for feedback. And when the letter went out, I actually didn't hear anything from anyone. But then when the agenda got published with the letters, I got barraged on Saturday. And it was great. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. So we got feedback on the feedback, which was really wonderful. We've all always said we want to get a lot of feedback from the residents, not just the same few people that constantly comment on certain items, and we're getting it. So that's really good. I was away on July 30th when we reviewed this the last time, so a lot of my comments are the same as what I mailed in and Marshall read then. So I'll share them now, and they're more just general comments. You got to find a way to allow some sort of parking during the daytime for your guests and for service providers. full stop. It's just impossible not to do that. There's a lot of support for no parking overnight. I agree with that. I think that's a great idea. There's a lot of support for don't allow fire hydrants to be blocked or driveways to be blocked. Wonderful. RVs was an interesting topic. I don't see a lot of RVs, but I feel relatively strongly if someone has an RV and they want to park it in their driveway for 48 hours to load it up, clean it out, fill it with water before they do their trip, 48 hours in and 48 hours out, let them do it. They shouldn't need a permit for it. Don't park it on the street, but let them park it in their driveway. RVs in terms of guests. If you have grandparents, aunts, uncles, or whatever that come in to visit you, like Christmas Vacation, the movie, and they want to drive an RV, let them get a permit for a week at a time to park in your driveway, not on the street, in your driveway. I think that seems pretty reasonable. Beach parking, I really hate how it's written in this ordinance for beach parking, because the way it's written is if I have a barbecue at my house and I have my guests park on the street, they better not go to the beach, because if they go to the beach, they're getting a ticket. As long as they stay at my house and eat the barbecue, they're fine. It really needs to be cleaned up. Make it clear that parking for the sole purposes of accessing the beach, and not also as a guest of a resident, is prohibited. It's got to be something along that lines. I get it. We don't want people to come to town and park and go to the beach. But if I'm having a barbecue and I want my guests to go to the beach, let them go to the beach. Probably going with them. In terms of commercial vehicles, this is another one I got a lot of strong feedback on. In our neighborhood, Bellito, we have Dr. Pam, who is an orthodontist, and she happens to have a little sign on the side of her car. Dr. Pam should be allowed to park her car in her driveway, even though technically it's a commercial vehicle. That shouldn't be an issue. I think we should allow regular duty commercial vehicles to be parked in the driveway overnight if the resident is willing to put up some hedges, a gate or whatever, so their front yard isn't an advertisement zone. Dr. Pam puts her car in her driveway, there's a big gate, there's a big hedge. The only way you're seeing her car is if you peer over her fence. I think that's pretty fair. I wouldn't want her parking her car across the front of her yard saying, hey, this is my advertisement. But if people are somewhat muted about how they have a regular duty commercial vehicle, I don't think that's an issue. Obviously, I think it's a bad idea to have trailers, dump trucks, anything like that parked overnight. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Those should be parked elsewhere. In terms of no parking signs, this was an interesting one, a lot of feedback. I like the idea of requiring commission approval. I think that's probably smart. It's not that I don't have faith in Marshall or the chief, but as I've always said, all these ordinances that we put in place have to last way beyond all of us. I'm actually fine if residents want to have input on that too. I wouldn't have an issue if it was commission approval and a resident who's going to have it in front of their house has a chance to say thank you, but no thank you. I don't want it, unless of course it's a safety issue. If you have to put up a sign because it's on a dangerous curve or something and it's a safety issue, well, I'm sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Resident, but we got to do that. But if a resident doesn't want a no parking sign in front of their house, they should have that. They should have some say on it. But certainly the commission should have some input. This one was actually a really big one. Parking on the grass. And this tangentially was similar to something Dr. Greenwald sent in, which is multiple residents said to me, allow me to park on my grass at least partially if I have guests. I'm doing you other residents a favor. Instead of them parking on the street, let's park half their car on the grass, half on the street. It's easier to get cars through. They're my guests. And by the way, I'm responsible for maintaining my grass anyway, so if they destroy it, I got to fix it or you're going to give me a ticket. I actually don't have an issue with that. They're being good residents, as Dr. Green said, neighbors helping neighbors. On that as well, there were other people that came and said, for construction parking, if I'm a neighbor of a house that's going on and I want to allow 2 trucks to park on my front yard, and I'm trying to be a good neighbor, let me do that. I'm trying to help the whole community. I'm trying to help the job get done faster. And again, I'm responsible for maintaining my own grass. So if the construction trucks destroy it, I got to fix it. Oh, well, I have to, that's just part of my responsibility. One last thing, and this is not for this part of the ordinance, but I'll pass it along anyway because I thought it was important. The pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction on construction parking. Time to bring it back to center. That was a common theme. Although the only suggestions I got that I thought were noteworthy is that idea of allowing a neighbor to say, I'll allow 1 or 2 cars to park in front of my house, half on the grass, half on the street. That way, there's still plenty of access through the street. Obviously, we don't want to go back to construction vehicles parking everywhere, wherever they want, whenever they want. But if neighbors want to be good neighbors, allow them to be good neighbors. I don't understand why we wouldn't.
Okay, good comments. Commissioner David?
I agree with everything that Greg said. I think that we can say that you can park on the grass or partially on the grass with specific approval from the property owner. It's their property, they have to fix it. I think when we said no parking on the grass, it really wasn't meant for these side streets, it was meant for A1A, that people shouldn't be able to pull over onto the swales on A1A. So we have very different interests in this town, and we can't really lump them together because they don't apply together on something like this. You're not allowed to park on A1A, period. So that's not the issue. I drove up and down these streets the other day, and while Bellito, by and large, doesn't have an issue, most people's driveways are circular or very large, and there isn't a particular problem. On Highland Beach Drive and Bel Air Drive and Russell, there are problems, and the streets are definitely narrow. In some places, it's not an issue because obviously you can't park in front of a driveway. I mean, that's just true every place. You can't park in front of a fire hydrant. Again, that's true every place. And a lot of these homes are multiple family homes, and it's all driveway. And you go from one driveway to another driveway. If you are going to want people to park 15 feet from a driveway, you're eliminating virtually all the parking on some streets because there isn't that much space in between the driveways, which is problematic. If you can't park in front of a mailbox because that's where there is a swath of curb in essence, does the post office have to get out and actually walk and put the mail in? It could be that the post office or the postal delivery person just doesn't want to get out of their truck, and maybe we need to make them get out of their truck and deliver the mail. You can walk around a car that's on the street and put the mail in the mailboxes. We can also consider either limiting parking to one side of the street or something like alternate side of the street parking so that you don't run into the problem of not being able to get through. You absolutely aren't going to get through if cars are parked right across from each other. The street isn't wide enough. So if we can limit it, then I think that would be a good thing.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yeah, in approaching this, I think, the first thing we had to decide is, do we have a problem that warrants a solution? And, from a lot of the comments I think we have heard and complaints from residents, we do have a problem. So it sort of sets with us to do something versus just doing nothing and letting this ride. So I think we have to move ahead and see if we can find a good, rational way to deal with this. The notion that keeps going through my mind, this is more typically a problem that a lot of urban areas get into, where you have difficult parking, limited parking on side streets. And the notion of a residence sticker keeps floating through my mind. And if somehow being able to identify who the residents are extending to that permit certain abilities to use the frontage at their house or whatever might come with that. I know that might send a difficult signal to someone who's not familiar with it, but I think where I would like to see this go is down a road that facilitates the residents and their guests and the attendant service needs, and tends to put the regulations and restrictions more on those who come in from outside the community. So the notion of a sticker kind of program had come into my mind. I'm not sure where we go with that, but I'm wondering if there might be some good applications for that. I really don't want this commission to, I don't want to get involved in deciding where signs go. I think that's another one of those issues where we've got better things to do. So I would not be in favor of that. Let's see, let me see if I had another point here. I think, in general, that's it. I think if there's some way to approach the sticker thing, that might alleviate some of the issues. Thank you.
Commissioner Seidman, Councilor Seidman.
Sure, thank you. This is my home movies part 2 today, I guess. I went to the side, well, I live on a side street, and I actually visited them, as did Evelyn lately, but I visited them 4 times in 4 different weather conditions and also weekends versus weekdays. And there was like a eureka moment on 3 of the streets. It was like, no wonder. And I took photos, as I like to do, and I'll explain from the photos. Oh, that's cool. Whoever put that, log that up. We'll take Bel Air Drive. There are only 3 places on the entire street anyone can park. And when I was there, and multiple times, it's located at the end, the north, we're looking west here, it's located, the biggest one at the end on the northwest side. And Mrs. Matthewman, who has been here numerous times, happens to be one of the nicest spots, which is probably why she has taken upon herself to come in and discuss this with us. She has these right at the front of that spot there. She has overhanging trees that if you park under them, especially in the summer, you have shade. We have that issue on our street as well, that visitors, no matter where they go, like to park under the shady trees and then go walk all the way down the street. Every time I came, there were lawn crews. Whenever they were there, they were at the very end of the street, parked in that long spot that was available. Many of these are some of them are rentals. It's actually more than I originally thought when Marshall and I were looking at a community ownership site on the computer together. Many of them are rentals, and then the other ones who are full-time homeowners do get tired of having trucks and cars parked in front of their house, and then they go elsewhere. This is the end of Bel Air Drive, where people park head in the cul-de-sac, which prohibited me from turning around, as they're designed to do. And I believe the Highland Beach Police moved that vehicle. But the cul-de-sac is necessary unless you want to back all the way out, especially for the waste management trucks and big construction vehicles. And this shows, again, a spot where you can pull in and park, and you can see the roads are fairly narrow. There's no way you could put a third lane or pass if there were cars on both sides. Interesting on the side streets, Bel Air Drive and Russell, a lot of the townhouses have front bumper to back bumper parking. So the first guy pulls in, and then the second car backs right in there. Now, to back out of that spot, you need a decent circumference. You cannot just back. So if someone were parked behind these cars, even on the other side of the street, and there were a full lot, those cars could not back out of their driveway. You need a full 2 lanes to do a proper back out and move. And so this is, again, another situation. And there you've got a lot of cars. Because of the parking requirements for these townhomes, there's very few places where anyone can park on a grassy area. And it is, as Commissioner David brought up, there are mailboxes throughout these streets, and it is a federal law that a mailbox must be cleared by 15 feet to allow the mail person to have access to mailboxes, because if they have to get out of their truck and make a delivery, there was a time that they just quit coming to certain streets. They are not required to deliver if a mailbox is blocked. This was an interesting situation where the car here on the right, or the north side of the street, was pulling into the home and had to wait for the service vehicle there, the vehicle to pull out in order to go home, where I sat there and watched that transpire. So again, there's not much wiggle room on these side streets. Here you have what could have been a grassy knoll to park, but it's full of the mailboxes for those residents. Another cul-de-sac. Again, you can see on the left, it's solid driveway. I'll just pick up the speed here. Same thing, front to back parking. Same thing. Same thing, there could have been a little grassy spot there, but it's taken up by pavers, which reduces landscaping bills too, so there is an advantage to that. That's the end of the cul-de-sac there. And this is a little bit of flooding. I think that was Bel Air Drive, which is being handled. Gosh, how many pictures did I take? This is an overview where you can see from Google Maps where there isn't any place to park. Just hardly anything. Russell, same thing. Now we get to Highland Beach Drive. It's interesting because it takes that little S curve there. So this is where nighttime parking would be very hazardous. You come around the curve and somebody's in the road, especially if it's a dark vehicle. You can't see much. Lighting isn't that terrific. And this is just some diagrams I pulled up from one of the sites, I think FDOT, where, as you can see, the straight-in parking as they have on the side streets, you really need that full 2 lanes to pull out. Whereas if you have angled parking, which I did not see on the side streets, you only need the 1 lane if you're a good driver. So I think that would help people understand. Sorry. In the Bel Lido section of town, where most are single-family homes, people have, for the most part, enough driveway space to pull in many gas service vehicles, even yard crews. When I was thinking of all this over the last 18 years, it seems like, it seems as if a really common sense position might be that these side streets, other than the single-family homes, really cannot accommodate parking on the streets. There's just nowhere to park. Well, 3 spots on Bel Air, 2 spots on Russell, and about 4 on Highland Beach Drive. And so not only should we not have no beach parking, but I don't see how we could allow any guest parking, really, unless it's that small swath of space toward the end of the block, and that is where service vehicles park. For the single-family homes, it should be very easy to say, when at all possible, park in your driveways, even the service vehicles. It just makes sense. We have no sidewalks, and so where can people walk dogs, have their kids scooter? It's the road. Roller skate, we used to roller skate in the road. So really, I think people should be good neighbors and make best effort to park in the driveway. And let's not be lazy, as someone said, and just park every which way on the road. So I think that would be a help. We're missing some letters, even the ones we have today. I think there's another set of letters that might have come in from residents. But nonetheless, the Bel Lido board met, and they came up with the letter that's involved in the packet there. And basically, they were saying, representing about 300 residents in there, that one sign at the beginning of each street could easily stipulate no parking except for maybe short-term service vehicles, or no parking at all, and then possibly post a sign where there is 1 spot on Bel Air Drive, for example. But their position was that people of the town who live on these streets should really make a determination of where the signs should go. And so they feel like the homeowner association should weigh in on those streets. There was also discussion of having parking permits for contractors and registering our service people who come in. The landscaping, the plumbing, the air conditioning, they're usually registered in town, but I don't know if that's checked. Let me see. As far as the codes, I do think we need to make them uniform, but for the side streets, with the exception of this parking on the Bellito being able to accommodate in the driveways many of the vehicles necessary. And then lastly, when there is a party, as people have, notify the police department. This has been going on 29 years. I'm here now. Call the police. I'm having a boat parade party. Fine, park on one side of the street. Problem solved. Or if there's a wedding or whatever, just notify the police on a Friday ahead of time. And I think that really sorts out a lot of the problems. It's just common sense to that. Otherwise, the ordinance does need to include mailboxes under the general parking. Under section 16.6, we have to give the 15-foot clearance on that. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My comment is I would like to hear from Chief Hartman. He is our police officer. We had a comment this morning from a resident saying things are pretty good right now. That's what I'm hearing. Bellito was a mess, and Peggy and I both worked together for a long time on that. And I think with the construction trucks and all of that, I think that's worked out fine. But I would like to hear from the chief, because honestly, he has the expertise in what's actually going on. And what do you recommend to us?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I heard a couple of different things here today, and I didn't hear anything specific about the ordinance that you have right in front of you, but I've heard some general comments. So my observation from listening to it, a couple of different things that were brought up. I think what we're trying to address is some of the ambiguity in the prior parking code that we had. It was very general, very broad, and it encompassed some state statute things that we have covered under state statute. Quite a bit is covered under state statute. So we're able to do many different things. What we can do is customize ordinances down to the local level, which is what Brian did with some of these things in here. And I think some of the challenge, Commissioner Bobby, what you brought up, Vice Mayor, is that when you talk about things of grass, some people don't want any tires on their grass. Some people say it's okay to park. I think what the original ordinance was designed for, though I was not here, is so that people do not have cars sitting on their front lawns. And that's why that's in there, that they have to be in a designated parking space, and you don't people that have a 4-car driveway that have 5 cars, there's always a car parked on the lawn. So I think trying to implement some of these things, the commercial vehicles, we've dealt with a few in some of the other associations where there's rentals, whether it's a plumbing truck, roofing, we had a couple of different instances. So I think that's why those things are in place to deal with them in the different neighborhoods, and your neighborhoods aren't overrun with commercial vehicles. But I think it does cover that if it's behind, not by view of the roadway. So yes, if someone had a yard or a hedge, some of these rentals and multifamily homes don't have that. So that's why that's ordinance is in place. I agree with you, the overnight should be in there. So the challenge for us is what you're going to decide on here is that you're right, there is no parking on these side streets. So what we hear from so many people over the last decade is that people that come visit them should not expect to get a ticket for being for a dinner party because they're in a multiplex unit. They're allowed 2 spaces and 2 people come visit them for a dinner party. Where do they park? So what's the problem we're trying to resolve here? I guess that's what we're trying to get to the crux of this. And how much are we going to implement to put onus on every resident for every time someone comes visits them? What more regulation are you going to require of staff, of your police department, that you want them out there checking tires, checking grass, checking who belongs to what vehicle? What are we trying to solve? We don't have people from the outside coming into our community. We have one location where we do have people trying to get on the beach. That's an open access. We're trying to deal with that from a problem solving right now to close that access. Pat Roman was there this morning waiting for utilities, and so are two different bicyclists and someone walk up to that walk path with surfboards. So they're using that path, not just parking. We're trying to get that resolved with the HOA to help stop that public access to our beach, which will bring that in. The other side street neighborhoods are all people that work here, visit here, or are part of our residents. We see commercial vehicles in your neighborhood for your residences that are parked in front of mailboxes and other people's property with their big trucks and their trailers that behind them. That's what they're here doing. How restrictive you want to get into this and create these ordinances is going to be a challenge. I think that's what we're looking for, some reasonableness. Say, what do you want from your police department in your town on where people can park when they come into Highland Beach? We don't find them going here and going to Meisner Park to shop or catch the tri-rail anywhere. If they come into these side streets, they're visiting people here. So the people that even raise the concerns have had people come visit them, and we've had to give warnings to. How do we decipher day in and day out in each neighborhood who should be where and who's doing what? So that's what we're trying to come up with an ordinance that says your vehicles can be there as long as they're following state statutes, they're not blocking driveways, intersections, fire hydrants, all those things are in place. We would like them to see not overnight parking, because then that doesn't allow for people to own more vehicles than they're allowed to park. And as we do our patrols all night long, we know if there's a vehicle on the street that shouldn't be there. We don't expect to drive down the street, pull down the street at 2 in the morning and see a vehicle in the roadway. That helps us with some of our patrols, our deterrence, and crime prevention efforts. So that's a big piece. And some of the other stuff is beach parking. If in this new ordinance, you put up that where you approve specific signs in certain areas, you can do that. We didn't have that under the old ordinance. So that's an option that could solve some of your specific problems in some places. Because we can tell you on other streets, people don't want to see parking regulated and taken away, because this is what they deal with, because they don't have homes and they don't have driveways to park extra vehicles in.
My feeling would be that if you took what Gregory said, we can transcribe verbatim what Gregory said, what all the commissioners said, and if you work with Marshall, I feel that you're the expert in this area. Your men are out there, and I would like to see you and Marshall, out of everything that's been said here, and we'll have the minutes taken verbatim, and try to put this together. I think you're on the front line. Your officers are out there, and people live there. And we heard today from Diane Matthewman, things are really good. Those side streets are different than Bellito. So, but we need one ordinance for condominiums, and maybe we have to put a line there that parking is not allowed on A1A. In other words, it should be in there, but maybe we have to use streets to say different things for different streets. I know in Bellito, that's really been cleaned up, thanks to Peggy. And I think people are happy there. From the few people I know there, they're pretty happy. There used to be the construction trucks and everything. It was too much. But would you object to doing that if you could work with Marshall, take everything that was said here and put it together? I'm looking at Marshall, another job for them.
We talk about parking every day.
Yeah, they talk about parking every day. We got to get something in writing. Take some of what Greg said.
I mean, if we want like I said, I don't think we're going to, crack the puzzle tonight. I think we're going to have to work a couple renditions of this. We can take the comments, we'll sit down, pour through them and see if we captured the essence of the first round-ish of conversation, because we're going to come back and there's going to be aha moments that other commissioners are, you're going to have those and like, you know what, it would sound better if we did this, or this doesn't make sense, I saw this. That's going to happen a couple times because the parking issue tends to be a difficult one to deal with. So we could take our liberties to kind of take what was said, put it in there in language, clean up some of the things that we need, and then come back and say, okay, this is the first draft. Now, do we want to move to first read, or do we want to tweak it some more? And the only thing that I think would be tricky is if, it's not tricky to write in there, but do you want us to do it on a road-by-road basis? Or are we asking, because some of the stuff I heard, the pictures told 1,000 words, and some of the, you put mailboxes in here, a couple of those streets, you're not parking anywhere. You just
That's what I
can't.
said.
You just can't.
You can't.
That's
Yeah.
what I said.
And if we
There's
have,
nowhere.
and if we have the flexibility that if we get a real emergent issue, Chief and I will say we need a sign, and then you guys approve it or not approve it, however you guys settle that issue out. We'll put in a no parking sign, and then people will know. You just can't park there, and then the options are gone.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
I recommend also that the chief and marshal speak to the Bellito Association. They represent everyone on every side street except the north side of Highland Beach Drive and the south side of Russell. Everything else is included in that association, and it's over 300 people. So I recommend that they get with them and get there, and
Chief will
the
be sure to do
president and weigh their comments heavily, because they polled also the commission.
The one problem with that is the comments for the homeowner association for Bellito in here was only the members of the HOA. They didn't survey any of the residents.
I'm not saying use it
So
only.
they don't represent the 300, they represent the 3 people that are on that committee.
Well, there's 7, and I'm
Seven.
just saying, they collected comments also. I'm just saying include them in the discussion. They represent more than just one person. But I would also point out that most of the multiple family homes have guest parking. They have assigned guest parking. I really think a lot of this has just come down to somebody just wants to park in the road and run in. I really do. I don't think every person in every side street has guests every day. And I can't remember the last time anyone called about any parking issue in the last year. I haven't heard maybe
Since
one.
you've dealt with the construction parking, the parking complaints
Right.
have almost,
If 3 neighbors have a parked car out front, it's no big deal. If every person parked 10 cars on the road on the same night, that's a big deal. That doesn't happen. So it's just common sense, really.
Yeah, but I think the expertise lies with
No, I
the police
agree.
officers.
No, I agree with that.
They're out there on the street. The main problem, how all this came about, and the most complaints, were that people were parking there and walking to the beach. So I think the sticker idea might be a possibility. I think it's up to you and Marshall to figure this out.
And also, Madam Mayor, if people have a guest, park in front of their abutted property. Don't park 3 doors down because they have a tree or they don't feel like pulling in. I mean, if you have a guest, you should park it in front of your house.
But I don't want to get to the point where we're telling people what they have to do. It's got to be simple.
I understand.
Yeah,
We can
it's-
address it from a,
That's the problem with Bel Air. It's just the
Yeah.
3 spots, and they're in front of certain houses, including Miss Matthewman's. So.
Okay, I would like maybe someone to make a recommendation or a motion.
Should we take
Oh,
public
actually, we're going to
comments?
take the public comments, of course, yes.
Doug Hillman, Dalton Place. Overall suggestion. With all due respect, the commission should be dealing with broader issues than where somebody should be parking. Each side street has its own unique issues. As demonstrated by the photos, I ride my bike up and down the side streets, and it's not a Bel Air problem. It's a side street problem, obviously. So the big issue is you can't park in front of a hydrant, and you can't park in front of a mailbox. But whether you go to a party and park in front of a neighbor's house or not is a side street problem. So perhaps the ordinance deals with the large issues and let the side streets determine their own unique problems. And let them determine where a no parking sign goes. Why should the commission deal with where no parking signs go? And if the side streets don't want no parking signs, let them say don't put any no parking signs on my streets. Why do we care?
Well, I feel that the police are there.
Let the side streets,
so,
they
you know,
live there,
I
it's their
think
properties, it's their homes, let them decide on that.
Or let the
Okay?
police
So
department do it.
Let them work with the
That's
police.
right.
and with Marshall, and between the side streets, they either have organizations or not, and not everybody's a member of the organization. They choose to join or not. Let them determine that. If they don't want a commercial, what was it? She's an orthodontist?
Yes.
And, you know, if they object to her having her car parked inside, covered by hedges, that's their issue. They live there.
That's
If
right.
they don't care about people, you know, neighbors parking on their grass, that's their issue. I don't think the town commission should care. That's their neighbor. Let them be neighbors. Let them decide what to do in their own neighborhoods. I don't think that's a commission issue. So let the neighborhoods manage their neighborhoods. You know, like states manage states, the federal government doesn't manage states. Okay? So my suggestion is this ordinance deal with big issues, not neighborhood issues. Let the neighborhoods take care of them. The other side streets don't have parking issues because there's no place to park, proven by the photos. So we don't need an ordinance for all that stuff. Okay? And we've got two very good commissioners here to take care of where the parking issues are. Let them deal with it with their HOAs. Thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Seibert, you
Yes.
wanted to, well,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
are there any more public comments? Wait, there's a couple of people. Okay, go ahead. Sure.
David Axelrod, Toscana. First of all, I don't understand why the code enforcement board is not handling this discussion. Obviously, they did not really finalize enough for you people to get there. Now, I understand they had the last meeting either in May or in July. This is November. They should have had a meeting regarding this, and more meetings. We in the planning board have gotten things back many times before it's gotten to you people, and this should not, you shouldn't have wasted 1 hour on this right now. Secondly, let's talk about A1A for a second. If you go north on A1A, I am to have attended several parties up north on A1A, okay? I'm talking about big parties. In one of them, we were told carpool together or plan to go back and forth. On the other one, somebody had a huge party on the east side. They ended up getting valets for that night. And I think it was, I don't know if they went to the church or whatever, but there are options for big parties. People can find, if they're going to have a party, 10, 20, 50 people. We have the same situation inside our gates of Toscana right now. We have a situation. But when we have parties, we add an extra valet because we don't really have that much parking in there, and we find areas. But you have to do something. I definitely agree. I think that Marshall, I think that the chief should definitely get together with the code enforcement board, if we can get some more members of the code enforcement board, and go forward with this a little bit more. Yes, I think beach parking, I agree. I think no beach signs that said no beach parking can go up. For Bel Air, for Bellito, maybe you want to, in front of that beautiful thing, put gates and control your neighbors. You can't do that. Okay. But otherwise, something, they have to take an issue. But Doug, I have to disagree with you, because if you're going to allow the neighborhoods to do that, then you're going to allow the neighbors to decide how they're going to build their houses, how they're going to. You can do that. I'm just saying,
that's not what
it's
he
one
meant.
step, but they can go from one step. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
It's open. She wants to answer you.
David, by the way, on May 14th, it went to the Code Enforcement
Right.
Board for review.
Okay.
And on July 23rd, the Code Enforcement Board reviewed and recommended approval. So it has been to them.
Yes, but obviously, we have recommended approval on UP. Obviously, it wasn't approved. Obviously, then came this whole thing with the public, and then the public came back, and it never went back to the planning board.
No, it didn't go back to the planning board.
I'm sorry, I mean the
To
code
the-
enforcement
I know
board.
what you meant.
Yeah, the
Okay.
code enforcement
We've
board.
gotta
I don't
move on.
see that.
We do need
Because
to move on.
basically, the comments should have then come back to the code. Hey, this is what you wrote. We have suggestions to change it, and they should have worked and amended it before it came here. You shouldn't be, you're not the workshop, okay? The workshop are the boards, whether it be the planning board, whether it be the beach board, whether it be code enforcement, whether it be appeals. We are the workshops to make your life easier. Use us.
Thank you. Dr. Greenwald, I know you have a comment, and he always has lots of wisdom. He does.
Okay, lots of wisdom, yeah. Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. This has been circulating around for a long time now. I gather it's not going very far again today from the discussion. As a resident of one of the side streets, I mean, clearly things are much, much better since the construction rules were passed. I don't think there's any question about that.
Thank you.
Having said that, things are not perfect. Not so much necessarily with residential vehicles, most of which is just common sense. And as Peggy said, for years we've gotten by very nicely. If people will notify the police we're having a party, there's going to be a lot of people that I can't fit in my driveway. Everybody knows, it works out fine. So most of it is really common sense and so on. But having said that, you still need rules. You still need codified rules. Otherwise, the police don't know what they should be doing, which is what the situation was before we had the new construction rules. And we would ask, and they would say, well, we need like guidance from above to know when we can tell what construction vehicles have to be moved and where and when and this and that. We still have issues in our neighborhood with service vehicles, not construction vehicles as in big construction projects, but painters, pavers, repair people of various kinds, working at a neighbor's property who either park on my lawn, block my trash pickup, block a driveway, and this still goes on. And whatever the rules are going to be, the police need to know so that they can do something. Because I don't mind if Greg wants to have his family car parked on his personal lawn, but I wouldn't want his family car on my lawn, and nor do I want my neighbor's construction vehicles on my lawn, because it destroys my lawn, and it sometimes destroys my sprinklers, and it's a nuisance, and it doesn't look good. And my wife looks out the window and goes, who's that truck? They're not working here today. So things are clearly better. They're not perfect. He wasn't my favorite president, but again, you know, the words that you can't let the perfect get in the way of the good have some, make a certain amount of sense. And with some of the ordinances, you're never going to get it perfect, but that doesn't mean that and you're also never going to get 100% of the people who agree with whatever it is that you do, no matter what. But it's still your responsibility after getting input. And I think you've really tried with this. I know I've been to meetings where the chief has had input, where the code enforcement officials have had input. And I know it's been back and forth to the code enforcement board a couple of times, because the first time when it went, I made the comment at this meeting that you got to do a better job informing them, because when it went there, they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing with it. And then it went back again where presumably they did know what they were supposed to be doing with it, and they voted for it. So, again, I'm not saying it should happen today. Let the chief get together with the town manager, let them go over it again. But you need to pass something. You need to recognize that it's probably not going to be perfect. It shouldn't be too onerous. We want people to be able to enjoy their property, but we also need to be able to protect the rights of other people in the community. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much.
May I ask him a
Yes,
question?
wait, question?
I have a question for Dr. Greenwald.
Yeah, Dr. Greenwald.
I don't want to pick on your lawn.
No, this is good, but you're highlighting something that I heard from a lot of different people, so I want to make sure I understand it. I think you were alluding to the same sort of thing of allow a resident in some way control the parking in front of their property. Is that what you were saying? Because that was the same thing that I heard from everyone else about allow parking
No,
on grass.
no, that is not what I'm saying, in the sense that I don't want to be responsible personally for what other people in the community are doing. I would, because it creates a very adversarial relationship with neighbors. And that is clearly not what I or anybody else should be looking for. That's why we should have rules, so that when the police, when they make their routine rounds, which they do, if they see somebody that's blocking my driveway, they should ask that person to move. And again, as I've said before, I'm not interested in the town raising tons of money by giving out tickets.
We're not asking for that.
Exactly. I mean, the goal is to just get the person to move. If they refuse or whatever, that's different. But it shouldn't be me that has to go out there, because it creates adversarial relationships that I don't want to get into, and I don't think that the goal should be to pit neighbor against neighbor. I think that's just not a good idea. So, no, for your property, if you want to park on your lawn, I don't think it's sightly, but, you know, but I'm talking more about other people, not your own personal vehicles on your property. I want your people who come to your barbecues to be able to enjoy going to the beach also.
Yeah,
thank you.
Of course. Okay, all right, wait 1 second. John Bowden's been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
John Bowden, 3407 South Ocean Boulevard. Oftentimes, I've heard people up here in the commission complaining about home rule issues. You don't like it when the county tells you what to do, and you don't like it when the state tells them what to do. Well, now you're telling the homeowners associations what to do, and this is a home rule issue in many cases. And I think, as this commission, you need to back off. You need to have the homeowners associations, the condo associations take charge of some of those things. I think when we put in the holiday no work rules, the Saturday no work rules, you know, we're in way late on a couple of construction projects in our condo. If we could have worked Saturdays, if we could have worked some of the holidays, we would have done that. But you overcame home rule. You told us what we'll do in our condo. You're telling them what they're going to do in their parking area. Back up.
Okay, John?
Yeah, well, what can I tell you? So, police are experts in enforcing parking regulations.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking, and police forces and their unions often weigh in on enforcing regulations or regulations that should be enforced for public safety. But suggesting that the police develop a comprehensive parking plan once again ignores your boards. If you learn how to use your boards, you might get something in front of you. Police don't make laws. They enforce laws. They don't like to be put in the position of making laws unless the safety of their brothers and sisters on the force or the safety of the public is manifestly involved. At least that's the experience I have. And I have some experience in parking, unfortunately. I suggest you give this back to the appropriate board if it still exists after this meeting, which I hope it does, and ask them to take an incremental approach to this thing. Okay, developing a comprehensive plan appears to be above everybody's pay grade in this town. What can be agreed upon on what circumstances, okay? And understand there will be signage when you start to regulate. You can't enforce something without informing people that there are consequences for breaking a regulation that they're unaware of because they don't live there. Okay? And that signage may, in and of itself, become controversial, as a lot of people don't like a lot of signs on their streets. So find out what there is basic agreement about. Find out what laws apply. Is it true you've got to be 15 feet away from a mailbox so they won't deliver your mail? All right? It's something to know about. Okay? But it seems to be that where there are problems that affect the whole community, like the trucks coming in to, do work on the streets, that you've dealt with it pretty effectively. You can't take and additionally, you cannot take a public thoroughfare and turn the regulation of that traffic over to the individuals who own homes in front of them. They don't own the street. You do, in the side streets, and the state does. Actually, the federal government contracts with the state to do A1A, okay? But turn it over to your board. I'm sure they will consult with the chief, and I'm sure that they will consult with the town manager. Let them give you what they can get.
Yes, Peggy Gossett, Seidman.
Okay, we have a code of ordinances, section 8.02, control and supervision of streets, assessments, et cetera. And this is why we didn't really need to be talking about this for an hour, I agree. The commission shall have complete control and supervision of all streets, roads, and alleys which have been dedicated to the use of the public forever, with the exception of State Road A1A within the corporate limits of the town, and shall by ordinance prescribe the method and manner of keeping up the working of the same, and this is tricky, not inconsistent with the laws of the state of Florida. The town shall have the power of assessment as provided by applicable Florida statutes. Florida statutes say no parking on the right-of-way. So I don't know why we didn't look this up before. And all I'm saying is, once we got rid of construction, once we looked at the side streets and said there's no parking possible except for 2 or 3 spots, and you should park in front of your own house or in your driveway or knock on your neighbor's door, there hasn't been that many problems. You don't park in front of your neighbor and then have your guy walk over to your house just because the neighbor has trees that keep the truck cool. It's just really simple. You don't block mailboxes, driveways, fire hydrants, or turning views. It's real simple. I don't know why we have to keep going over. And I still need a clarification of the law that we're allowing parking when the state says we cannot on the roadways. Right here.
Is there a town
Thank
attorney?
you.
Well, I can tell you that the only areas that I'm aware of where cities enforce no parking, and I'm talking about local jurisdiction, not state jurisdiction roads or county jurisdiction roads, is that if the municipality itself enacts an ordinance that says no parking on the right-of-way, because where I live in Delray Beach, everybody parks routinely in the right-of-way, and I know the chief, came from that area as well, and there was some talk years ago that, well, should we try to prevent that or talk about that, and I think it was overwhelmingly shot down, where it's kind of like, no, we don't want to do that because too many people depend on parking in the right-of-way in front of their home. So I understand what the state statute says, and I would have to look into that, but I'm assuming that they're really talking about state, maintained state jurisdictional roads where local governments have not taken that over, because I'm not aware of any city that, if there is not a local code that says you can't park like in front of your house or something like that, where someone is going to be cited for violating that particular section. And I could be wrong, and I would defer to the chief, but that's just my years of experience dealing with different codes.
Okay, thank you. It just
I think
seems
this young lady wanted to say
complicated.
something.
Mhm,
Yeah,
sure.
it's
Thank you.
complicated, yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy, 1005 Grand Court. My parents live at 3813 South Ocean Boulevard. We've had numerous problems recently, and I think it's because of the construction vehicles raising awareness. But it came at a very unfortunate time, and that's why I hope that it's not a blanket rule or an enforcement of this state right-of-way. My father suffered a massive stroke, and we actually had hospice there, and we were told by the Boca Raton police to get the vehicle off the right-of-way. We have full-time nurses at the house. The same problem arises if there's more than 2 cars in the driveway. So it does create a bit of, I don't want to say resentment, but when somebody is dying and you have a special circumstance, to just have a blanket rule where there isn't that kind of leeway. So maybe going back to some kind of parking pass that would identify residents might be something that could be considered. But just wanted to state that it's not always construction vehicles. There are special circumstances.
And one rule doesn't fit all. That's why I feel we're a municipality, but we're a very small municipality. And I go back to what I say. I feel the police department knows these roads, and I think we have to move on. And I would like, would someone like to make a recommendation that the chief and marshal?
Yes, but I want to make it clear.
Yeah.
The chief is not writing this ordinance.
No, he's just giving his
The chief really is there for informational purposes, to say what he has seen as a problem and what's enforceable. Don't pass something that you can't enforce.
Correct.
And I'm not even sure it belongs with code enforcement because there is no code.
And, well, code enforcement also.
But
they
not
passed
really.
it. They passed
Yeah,
it.
I know, but I'm not sure why we sent it to them, quite frankly.
Agreed.
If you want to send it to David at the planning board. But, you have to know what you can do and what the real problem is. And it can't be because this one doesn't like that somebody parked there and that one doesn't like that someone parked down the street. Sometimes there are just simple solutions. If you know you're going to have some kind of a service truck at your house, maybe the idea is we give residents parking stickers and they pull their car in the street and let the service vehicle park in their driveway. So it's not a big truck on the street blocking it, but somebody's personal car. Some of that, just common sense things. We can't tell people that they have to do that, but we could recommend that this is how you might deal with the issues. Government can't fix everything.
Okay. Okay, but then we've got to move on. We
I
have
have a quick
some more
question
things.
for Mr. Labadie. We got the resident, we took this and sent it back to residents via this letter, which worked well. We got a lot of input. In fact, there's more than, as I said, there's more than is here. There are some not included. But why didn't we get a newly rewritten ordinance to review instead of just the comments? Is it possible we could move in that direction where you would?
There's no way to
No
capture
way.
every comment in the ordinance. It would be conflict, because
Okay,
you'd
then.
say, don't park, and the next person would say, but you can park. That's the hard part, where
But
it
I'm
comes
looking
back
for
to
a
you
majority
to
of-
arbiter between conflict.
Okay, then. All
Yeah,
right, that's my
you know.
question. Thank you.
We just need some rules, like Dr. Greenwald said, basic, simple rules. And I know that the police department deals with it every day. And I know that Marshall has the experience and he knows how to do this.
Again, we'll include it, I'll do what you ask. So I've got some general stuff that we can include, but if you, at some point, you're gonna, there's gonna be multiple renditions, if you will.
Okay.
Are you or are you not going to allow parking on the street during the daytime? Are you or are you not going to allow parking on the streets in the daytime? All the rest of the stuff I can figure out, but do you or do you not want parking during the day?
I think we have to allow it based on certain limitations. You can't park in front of the mailbox or a fire hydrant or a driveway or within 15, or was it 20 feet from the intersection. And for a commercial vehicle, you can't park within 50 feet of the intersection. There was what someone thought was an ambiguity in here, but it wasn't, because one applied to personal vehicles and one applied to commercial vehicles. And commercial vehicles are bigger generally, so it's much more difficult to get around them and see what's coming when you're coming up to an intersection. But I don't think that we really have I don't think we have the right, but I don't think we should stop all parking during the day or in the evening. If you have a party at night, how do you say, don't come at night, I can only have it at noon?
Well, I mean, the hours, we can tweak that, but, okay.
All right. Anyone, I mean, we do have to move on. So at this time, is everybody in agreement that we'll give it to the chief and marshal? They'll come back with a newly written ordinance for us with all our comments today.
We should probably make a proper motion.
You want to do that? Go ahead.
No, I don't.
No, you don't want to? Okay. What do you think? No?
Yes.
That's up to you guys.
I move that we allow chief and marshal in conjunction with our attorneys and the things that have been discussed today to come back with a rewritten proposed ordinance.
I second that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Gothic-Seidman?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
Mayor Zellniker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to take a break for 2 seconds, for 2 minutes, 3 minutes? What?
Susan had to leave. She had a doctor's appointment. So
Okay.
we're going to have to put off 12G
Okay,
until
for the
our next meeting.
Okay. All right. Would anyone like a break? No? Okay.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes.
Can't sit in this chair too long.
Oh. I mean, if you want them back, I'll give them. Well, you know what? I have a ring that's almost identical. Is that an antique? I know mine is. Okay, because mine is from the 1880s. And they're a little different shape. But yeah.
I'm thinking it might be nice to have. Well, that's what a lot of people on Intercoastal called me about. I want my own guests on my grass, that's fine. I want to make sure no one else is on my grass. Yeah.
Right, drop them off here.
To make it, you're trying to make it easier for a fire truck to get through an ambulance or something like that because it's so tight. No, but half on, half off.
But if you're having a party, you gotta forget, people say, hey, Ray, mind if I park it after the people in your driveway? Or be gone by 2 in the morning, or 1 in the morning, or 11 at night, or whatever.
Or even for, the lawn guy or whatever. The pool guy trucks. I'm up.
And they're easy to pick up.
No, agreed.
Whether they're against or
No, without a doubt. And that's why there was this comment of let me kind of control what's in front of my house a little bit.
Yeah,
But I get it. You don't want it to be out.
I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know if they're doing either.
I feel badly for them because whatever it is going on.
No, I agree. Yeah.
There's no wind.
Get your garbage, get your mail, get in there. So that's a problem. Like those kind of things are problems.
Come back to the following Monday.
Yeah, of course.
We're responsible. And it shouldn't be, it's not bad enough.
No, not that. But I mean, what if, there's a certain spot, I don't want anyone parking in front of this part. Here, I'll always put my garbage here by my mail. No, I want to pick his brains for suggestions.
But not blocking my driveway.
Right, exactly.
They're gonna present a maintenance agreement.
No, obviously that. Right, you don't, the only time you should be allowed.
Well, it's like,
And
I won't take a next step until they know that they can talk to me. Either one, they're still gun shy from the
Saturday.
or two, they're just playing a game.
But the only, there's no beach parking issue except for that one street. I mean, I live on Bellito, drive right by where the gate is, go to the beach. No one has ever parked in front of my house in 3 years.
We're still moving.
Yeah, put up a gate, like we told them to do a year ago.
Right.
So a year ago, Diana called and I said, I have a great idea. I used to live right next to that access. I said, I have a fantastic idea. Put up a gate and I'll give you the company that did the push button codes. You don't even need a key that we did in our neighborhood. Nah, we don't want to. Well, that'll solve the problem. It solves it every other time.
As far as I know, it's the only place in
It's the only place there's a problem.
locked beach access.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I used to live one house from it.
We have codes in our building.
We have the key.
We don't know.
Actually, it's the same code.
Engineers asked
We
me
have codes in the elevator.
On what?
But again, it's
No, you can't change your mind. That's not fair.
You're allowed. By the way, it's very interesting. This whole thing with John I was actually
some look at the chance of that happening, then we may have to proceed those.
They have to move.
I might have cash flow. Why would we pull the trigger on a contract? We're 90-day pricing window. We don't know.
Yeah, I think that's gonna. I think it's gonna happen to a lot of communities. Yeah, I think that's gonna be a. Yeah, it's gonna be individuals.
We're pretty.
Right.
At a $91 million budget.
You are right. I'm gonna hit the restaurant right back.
Like fly shit on these because Caruso's gonna do it. Our legislators are gonna carry that. It's not us, not our relevance as a place.
Getting it out of committee is easy. It's getting the whole city, the whole house to vote for it.
Yeah, but are they gonna hang up something over a couple 100,000? Chances are less likely than if we were asking for 10 million. They might say, I'm not gonna hang this up. You can't because it's the same project, it's not the source. We have money.
No, I know.
We can't spend more than 150.
No, I live right across from Lake Ida, between Seacrest and Swin.
Because the charter cap.
Yeah.
The charter cap is our only problem. Because we can't do more than 350 for a project without a referendum. And I don't know, everybody seems to be gun shy to put something on a referendum.
And now it's going the other way.
now
I wish that
I'm agreeing with you that people would probably not.
south of there on the other side, and I sold it about 7 or 8 years ago. I always wish I would have held on. Yeah, Del Light, I think, yeah. And I mean, it was, and that place is just taken off.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the house, it could. They're gonna bid off too. We can do part of the project and then do this other part.
Oh, my next door neighbor,
Wait, if it's over budget, we pull that piece out.
1,800 square feet.
See if the appropriations.
Like one parking space.
Yeah, and if they do and they don't, then we can look at maybe enough time has passed, we can do the embedded lights.
No, but I mean, you know, she listed her house for sale for over $1 million. It's ridiculous. I don't know where people get the money.
I was telling
And the height though, is oddly enough, a little bit less than the requirement height that we have, the same data, so we're in good shape there, 4.5 feet we require above the mean sea level. Well, the thing is that wall, their sea walls are rough shape, they kind of come round it, it's not.
I know. Yeah.
Are we all here? I'm waiting for Peggy.
You got it. She'll be back any minute.
She's here. She's talking. You tell her. Miss Peggy, we need you. We need you. Okay. So I forgot already. Did we make a vote on that? You have to give it to the two of them. They should take the comments you made verbatim.
Well, I'll pass on everyone's comments. Take everyone's comments.
Yes, I said that.
Take us to 12D.
I know. Okay, we're up to 12D. We will start. Marcia will be back shortly. And I refer this item, it's the discussion of a Community Appearance Award Program, and it's going to be discussed by Commissioner Donaldson. So please tell us what this is about.
Okay, what I'm looking for here is a little bit of a discussion on some items that we might start thinking about doing in the community that are community building exercises. We heard a little bit about this at some of the League of Cities meetings when we had our annual meeting. And it intrigued me that, we spend a lot of time in, kind of divisive things and, really going through things that communities have to go through. But at the same time, I think maybe we should start paying attention to some things that help build the community as well. One thing I'd like to just bounce off my fellow commissioners, get some comments, suggestions, is a thought that it might be appropriate for us to look around our community and acknowledge and talk about people who are doing positive things to help the appearance of the town, going the extra mile, building a nice house, doing some nice groundwork improvements, whatever it is that we might want to think of that as, that we might set up a series of annual community appearance awards. These could go into different sections. We could identify a category for condominiums, a category for single family, category for landscaping. I've long had interest in trying to push private art in public view, where people who build structures put out sculptures and artwork that everyone in the community can enjoy as they drive or walk down A1A and around the town. We might have a special mayor's award where the mayor gets to pick something on their own. But it's just a notion. I think these kinds of things can come to us just from observation, from the building department saying, hey, there's really something nice going on here we should pay attention to. We may want to if we think this is worthwhile doing, we may want to route this back to the, actually, I was thinking about the Natural Resources Committee, only because they sort of have an umbrella charge regarding the look of the town, everything that sort of is all encompassing. And I think it would be a nice charge to give them a different kind of focus. So that's the idea. I just wanted to bounce it off everyone, get comments. I really wasn't looking for action today. I just wanted to put a feeler out and see what everybody thought about it.
Okay. Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, I'm just throwing this out. We used to have a designation as a favorite tree city nationally. Does anyone know what happened to that? When I moved here, we had a little plaque at the entrance of town. Possibly that, an arborist award, but it would be nice to have something nationally in addition to what Commissioner Donaldson is saying, and be interesting to have some kind of recognition. Maybe after A1A is rolled over. It's just an idea.
Okay, Commissioner David?
I think in general, it's a nice idea. My problem is who would do the deciding as to who got what award. And that could be problematic. You know, this is meant to bring the community together, and I don't want people fighting with each other because homeowner A said, well, I should have won, and homeowner B said, no, I got it, I deserved it. So you could be creating other kinds of issues. Just throwing it out there.
Okay, and Vice Mayor?
I'm fine with the topic. Might also be considered in a slightly different way, where it could be like at the end of each meeting, if a commissioner has something they want to highlight or whatever, they can say, hey, want to recognize this or whatever. Maybe it could be a little less formal, because then it's a little less adversarial. But I'm kind of open to anything in terms of framework. I don't think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely idea. I mean, I've worked on, before I came, we didn't have the Spring Fling. Originally, we wanted that to be a block party, but it turned into Spring Fling. But the concept was there, and we do have the Spring Fling every year now. And of course, we have our beautiful event. Anything that would, bring people together and be kind, it's fine. Anything anybody would want to do. But the problem is sometimes, especially in politics or what, somebody knows somebody and they're going to pick that person. I think it might get sticky, but it could work. I liked what Peggy said about the landscaping, because really, I've always been talking about that. We've not done a good job, according to our town charter, our codes. We're supposed to be, for every tree that's taken down, another tree should be replanted, and I'm like a broken record. It never happens. Tree comes down, it's gone. But, yeah, sure, it's something nice. I mean, how would you want to pursue it at this point? This is just a discussion. Commissioner Donaldson, how would you?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit of feedback to see if it's worth pursuing at all. I think what I'd like to do is the good comment on, how does it get done? Good question. Who does it? Do we make it formal, informal? Let me go back and mull it over a little bit more.
Okay.
And if I can get it up to a point where it makes sense to bring back formally, I'll do that.
Okay. And at this time, would anybody in the audience have any comments to make about that? No? Okay. And we're done with the discussion, so you'll come back with something more formal maybe. Now, the next item is discussion on adjustment size of advisory boards, elimination of code enforcement board, Commissioner Donaldson. I refer this to Commissioner Donaldson.
Okay, thank you. Get my reference open here. Okay, as I mentioned in the background information, with few exceptions, we've been struggling with trying to get our boards filled up. It's been pointed out, we only have about 4,200 residents to draw from who are permanent who are legal residents. And on top of that, even some of those are gone seasonally. So we continue to struggle with that and trying to get our board memberships where we would like to get them. Not up for action today, but in thinking a little bit about this, I think we need to start giving some thought to the nature of the boards and their composition. One thing that occurs to me is that if we're having troubles with numbers, that we may want to consider reducing each board to a membership of 5. We would have to figure out how to do that, whether we allow each position to sunset, whether we exclude board chairman from that sunset provision, that kind of thing, until we can float this down to a more manageable level where we're not struggling quite as much with filling all the roles. The second thing we need to start thinking about, and I've struggled with this a bit. We've taken up this issue of a magistrate before, and I have to say I have some mixed feelings about it. But we are stuck and seem to remain stuck at a very low level of participation on the Code Enforcement Board. And I think some attention needs to be paid to that, whether it's a matter that we are not properly defining their charge, we're not being clear enough in their mission, if we are not giving them enough support with technical personnel to understand their role, if we need to bring someone in to conduct a mini seminar at one of their meetings to help bring them up to speed on the state building code and our local codes. Whatever we need to do, something needs to happen. I'm particularly worried about that board. And whether or not, in the end, with respect to enforcement, maybe they need to shift more into, in effect, our arm for helping develop policy, and leave the enforcement part of that to the magistrate. So there are a couple of things that I think we need to start paying attention to. And I just wanted to get it out here on the table. Again, I'm not proposing any action today, but I do think we need to start thinking about some of these possibilities moving forward. So I'd appreciate any feedback.
Okay. Vice Mayor, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. All very interesting topics to consider. There are some boards that probably should either stay at 7, or at least the chair should be able to have a big influence on what they want. Like the planning board's almost always been full. The financial advisory board's almost always been full. Some of these quasi-judicial or boards that tend to get tasked a lot from the commission probably should stay at a bigger number, unless for some reason they want to go to a small number. If the board say, look, we really want to go down to 5, I would say leave them at 7. There are other boards that tend to task themselves more than we task them, like the Natural Preservation Board, and if they wanted to go down to 5, I certainly wouldn't want to stand in the way of it, if that's important to them. In terms of the Code Enforcement Board, you bring up a very good point. It is a little light at the moment. In the past, I've been a stronger proponent of having a magistrate, but with last meeting's adjustment where they can't determine administrative charges or anything like that anymore, I'm relatively comfortable with the Code Enforcement Board, but there is a real risk. There's a risk that they're going to face something relatively large from a developer, and they're going to get steamrolled by a lawyer, and they're going to possibly say something they might not have said or shouldn't have said in the way they say it, and it could put us in a bit of a difficult predicament. Not sure how we should deal with that. Whether it's depending on the item, the commission decides, hey, this is going in front of a magistrate, or hey, this is going in front of the Code Enforcement Board. We don't have a lot of code enforcement issues, so there are a lot of items that, smaller items, I'd probably want that board just to handle. But if it was a really major, big item with potential lawsuits associated with it, maybe we are supposed to have a magistrate. I don't know what the right answers are, but you certainly bring up some interesting points. As for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, I think that board's a little bit light at the moment in terms of individuals. If it gets a lot lighter, one of the things we can do is roll it into the planning board if the planning board wants it, if we couldn't fill that board role. I'm not saying we have to, but I'm saying if for some reason we can't fill it. But I'd rather obviously fill it than have that happen. Those are my comments.
Commissioner David?
Okay, well, I was thinking that maybe it's a possibility that we can divide this up in a similar fashion to what we did with the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, where they hear certain things at a certain level and the commission hears other things at a different level. I don't know how often anything is brought before code enforcement. So, I mean, that's another issue. If much like but adjustments and appeals, if when somebody gets turned down or they don't fit the guidelines and they adjust what they want to do to fit the guidelines so they're not going don't need a variance, then there's nothing going before adjustments and appeals, which is what happens most of the time. I'd like to, I need to know something about what goes on with code enforcement and at what point does something go to code enforcement? Does somebody get 1 or 2 warnings before it's in violation and then goes to code enforcement? I just don't know how that works. I also think that Doug's idea of allowing board members to call in gives us a much bigger pool of people to use, and then we don't have a problem with getting the board together. So rather than, strip boards of people, I would do it that way so you got the input.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, thank you. I think the calling in is a great idea. I don't think it's really cleared all the legal hurdles, and I don't know that we can jump in and do that at this point. It's an interesting give and take on the boards and the commission, because in one sense, the commission pretty much shows up for every meeting. We're elected or appointed. We're responsible. We're the final say. And yet the boards sometimes have better knowledge of certain areas, or if they don't have it, they go out and seek it. And so to me, it has to be a unified group of boards plus commission. And when you get all the heads together on those boards and the commission, I think we do better work. Because I don't think of everything, and Evelyn doesn't think of everything, and the attorney doesn't think of everything even. So if we could find a system where, let's say we don't have a quorum because it's June, but we have an immediate need and the guy wants to build and he wants a variance for this or that, maybe it could bump over to the commission. Maybe we could do it that way. There are some municipalities that do such a format. And then we don't have to disband a board. Certainly 3 years ago, the Code Enforcement Board was disbanded, and there was a very strong outcry in the community, and in 2018, we put it back together. And I know if it just happens to be there short now, well, season just pretty much started. We're getting people back here. Maybe they can fill it up. Maybe we should give time for the chairs to drum up some support. But I hate to go disbanding or reducing until we really get into season and see if we can fill those spots. I do agree that we maybe should relook at June and January not being the best times to just pluck from the pool of talent. But as I said, we did that when we had 5 going for 1 spot on a board and none for the other spots. So we were looking at sharing the talent. So I would be interested in working on a group effort for all of us instead of just jumping out and saying, you guys are out, you're in. That would be my general, just common sense and working together is just my general feel for it. Thank you.
Okay, and I will make a comment, because I was here when they disbanded the Code Enforcement Advisory Board, and I was very against it, because I feel that people want to be involved. We did have, and that's another thing, it's very, very rare that there's a problem in Highland Beach. We're a small, small town, and we usually work things out. It usually doesn't even get to that. I think 6 years I've been on this board. We had one time with a lady with a boat. That was it. Two times? Oh, twice. Okay, we had twice. Okay. I think maybe we have to establish what it is that we want the code enforcement to do. However, we did give the Code Enforcement Board, and as you had explained, Commissioner David, we are dealing with volunteers. And sometimes maybe they don't understand what we're asking for. We gave them the parking ordinance the first time, and they tabled it. It was tabled. Then we explained that we really need you to read this and come back to us with your ideas and your suggestions. And all they did was come back and say they approve it. And that was the end of it. So it's complicated. It's working with volunteers. And some people have the knowledge, some people don't. We want to include everybody. I'm for keeping the Code Enforcement Board. I'm also, like we had the situation today with the lady with the boat. Maybe that should have gone to the Code Enforcement Board. Why should these people, they're trying to sell a house, and why should they have to wait? I hear people complaining. Oftentimes that even if something goes before the planning board, well, I don't want to wait till next month. You know, I think sometimes we have to utilize our boards in a different way. If we have an issue, maybe call an extra meeting. But I have to say also, I did hear from someone in Boca. They're having a beach cleanup. And I took the information and I gave it to somebody on the, Linda knows, on the environmental board. Are they having a meeting? Is there a meeting planned for them? Because they're having a beach cleanup and they would like the Highland Beach to be included in the beach cleanup or whatever. So I don't really know what happened, but did the environmental board meet at all this summer?
Currently, we're canvassing the board for a quorum to meet on December 9th, which is Monday.
So you're going to be discussing it then. But the whole summer we didn't have a quorum, or?
No, they meet on a quarterly basis.
But I thought that the boards are allowed to request a meeting if they have something on their agenda. They can meet anytime. They should be able to meet anytime.
With that, I did speak to Dario Tertan, the vice chairperson of that board. He did bring that to me with regards to working with, I guess, Gumbo Limbo.
No, it was with Boca for beach cleanup.
Right, but he said a Gumbo Limbo, and I did speak with someone. They didn't realize that Highland Beach, the area is private. They will not come onto Highland Beach beaches.
However, we have had beach cleanups before from our own residents, and we go out there and we pick up the garbage. So it could have been coordinated together, but I don't see what yeah, okay, you can explain that.
If residents want to clean up the beach and do it collectively, they can. It can't be an endorsed activity of this town, which we assume that liability to trespass onto private property. Doesn't mean you can't do it. We just can't be the endorsing body of it. Do it, it's awesome. We'll give you bags and gloves, or leave it by the cans, we'll pick it up, but we can't like endorse it and say a body or an extension of this organization is trespassing.
Well, it wasn't an extension. All they wanted to do is that we should do it on the same day. But that's okay. All right. And the other thing that John Ross said, which struck me as strange, Mr. Ross made a statement that was actually inaccurate and incorrect. He talked about the FAB not even looking at our budget. Right? They didn't? Well, let me tell you, that was on their agenda. That's why they had that meeting July 11th. They never got to it. We can't help if we give something to a board, an FAB board, and for whatever reason, that particular chairman had put other things on that agenda, and he never got to it. But, I mean, every FAB board member, to my knowledge, and Mr. Hillman is now the chairman, maybe you could speak to that, had a copy of the budget before you went into the meeting, right? That's correct. So to stand there and say the FAB didn't look at the budget is a lie. It's an outright lie. It's not true. So you didn't have all the information. Sometimes, John, you got to have the correct information before you say something. But it is true. It was true. The FAB was given the assignment, and they got sidetracked on other issues, and they also, one board member had to leave early. But every single FAB person read that budget and gave comments if they had any. Isn't that correct? Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I know it, yeah. Anyhow, I don't want to belabor this. I think we have to go into more of, how to handle the advisory boards in the future. I mean, it's a whole different topic, but.
Okay.
I mean, but it certainly has to be looked at.
Yeah, okay. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
input. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to open this up to public comments, of course. Of course. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jane Perlow from Tuscana West, and I agree with Rhoda that it is premature at this time to disband the code enforcement or any of our advisory boards. It has been kind of upsetting that the code enforcement board, we had a death, we had another person move over to a different board, and yes, it is hard to recruit people. But we also have to be given things to take up so that we can have a meeting. I have not heard from anyone since the July meeting. I know Evelyn was there, and we had input, and we weren't given specific, like what you spoke about today, about so many rules and regulations. I do remember having a meeting in regard to the beach cleanup stuff, which was prior to you being on the board. So we do get things that we can discuss, but if we're not given the exact things that we're supposed to be looking at, or having perhaps the police chief be there or the code enforcement officer, you can't blame it on the board if now there's only 4 because one is gone and one moved over. I think we should look over maybe the maximum on certain of these boards only being 5. All right, maybe we would get, and it's also early in the season. It's November. She's right. All right, and maybe this is something we have to take up after a new commission is in place because they might have different ideas. So I'm happy to say that I'm glad that the mayor and Evelyn and everyone is bringing it to the attention, but we really don't want to diminish our boards to that they have no value or disband them, because if not, then the commission is going to have meetings like this, which go on forever. It's better that you give us some stuff, meat, and then we will work on it, but if you don't give us the direction, how do you expect us to go ahead? So please think twice before we disband the boards. We need them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Gary, you knew I was going to David Axel, Tuscana South. Let's first of all look at this and say, first of all, the planning board, we have 7 people. I think another correction, we also have 3 applications for this. First of all, I go out. I recruit. Okay, I just want to let you know that. I recruit people, and I think channels should do that. Go out and recruit. Find people and get them. I also think that we should definitely turn around, and if you have a situation where you have 3 people and one person gets suggest, I was originally applied to the finance board, okay? That was my first application. I was told, would you take the planning board? Now, as I said, I knew nothing about planning. I said, why not? I'll try it. And you can get people. As far as cutting back the boards, I think that's ridiculous. I really do. I said, first of all, I'll keep my 7 on me. We have very nice meetings, very cordial meetings, and we really accomplish stuff. As far as the issue earlier today about the boat lift, I absolutely agree. That should go to code enforcement. That gentleman who's putting up those pilings is breaking the code. It has not really, the planning board, we never got into it, but, somebody new. We have a planning person
Right.
who comes with, she's a leader. Since she came in, we've gone over subjects that you wouldn't believe. And I really think the code enforcement officer, who's an educated person, should be there for the meeting. I definitely agree with Doug about getting technology into this. I think we do need, there's a lot of people, and a lot of places who would love to be on boards, but they can't be, because in July and August,
They're
they're
gone.
at home. I every September, I'm up in North with my family. I turn around and I basically say, I know I'm gonna miss that meeting, and I've missed 2 in a row. I know I'm not gonna miss 3, but I missed 2 in a row. But again, we also have 5 people, and I have a vice chairman. Barry, you were on our board, okay? So you know, we always get at least 5 people for that board. We had one situation the whole year where we had 4. So I totally disagree about making it smaller. I think going forward, give the time for the code. The code enforcement board came back in 2018. Like I said earlier, give it time to grow. Let them grow into their position where they know what they're doing. Assign them what to do. You can't turn around to them and say, here's the parking thing. What did they do the first time they sent it? They said, we don't know what to do with it. Tell us what you want us to do with it. Let them grow into the position and go. So keep the status quo. Leave it alone. The boards, you did enough with the policy, as I said. That was done enough. Let's leave the boards alone for a while. Recruit, get out there. You guys talk to people in your neighborhood. Get them to join the board. That's the way you're going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 1 second. Doug Hillman, I want other people to have a chance. Okay. I want to give everybody a chance.
This morning, I just was made aware of a resignation on the finance board. With what we currently have open plus that, we're at a deficit now. No? Oh, Doug Hillman. I'll start again. I was just made aware of a resignation on the finance board. So with that and what we currently have, we're now at a deficit of 33%. That's like panic mode. And you're not going to like what I'm going to say, so I'll apologize up front. But you got big shoulders. We talked about it a month ago of getting the research done so we could have call-ins. And I know I come from industry, not from government. I know government works slower, but we should have had a legal response in 30 days, and we don't have one. We need to have a legal response on how to get this thing done. And I know it's on the agenda for next time, but please, can we have the legal reading on the next agenda of how to get this thing done? Because we got to move forward. We could be at a 50% deficit next month. This thing is going downhill fast. We need to know how to get this thing done. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Jane Perlo from Toscana West. I just want to say that I agree 100% with Mr. Hillman. I have just been appointed on Toscana West's board, and we do have board members who are not there 100% of the time, and they come in calling in, okay? We have their, So we have their phones there. They vote with us. They do whatever. They give their opinions. It's certainly within this board, commission, we certainly should be able to find out from the attorneys if this could be done. Because I think more people would want to participate if they knew, well, I'm not here, all year round, but I can be called in. I can make my vote and be part of the community. So I think Doug definitely brought up a point that, it could get really bad before it gets better. And I think we do have to start to recruit more people. I wouldn't mind serving on 2 boards. I've been on the finance board at Toscana West for 15 years, and then they just elevated me on the board. So it's something that I know a bit about. But I think it's important that we follow through and try to get some people who are not here 100% of the time to be able to call in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, anyone else have anything to say? Wait, all right. Wait, Commissioner David, please.
All right, as far as the Code Enforcement Board, I think you need to work closely with the code enforcement officer because you can't have a meeting unless he gives a violation to somebody. So he needs to get on the stick, and if a violation occurs, he needs to violate them so we can come before you to hear it. But
I just want to say one other thing to Commissioner David. I thought on the Code Enforcement Board that we'd also find a little bit more ways to get money into the town. We don't give our violations, which should be given, could get some revenue. I mean, we are a town that is short of revenue. So I don't think it's so terrible to issue violations if it's done multiple times, and it was done a lot with the property next to Toscana South. So definitely, this should be something to think about, raising maybe the violation numbers.
That's a different topic. Okay, all right, wait, Commissioner Gossett-Side.
I had a quick question about procedure. If we have a board member or board chair and he has served a number of terms and is up, is there a way under these duress times that we are short of members to actually allow someone to continue serving on a board? Is that possible, or do we just not go there? I'm asking the attorney and Marshall.
Okay, I'll say I have to take a look at the charter, but it does limit the terms. It's a
Right, it
fixed
does.
6 years, and you take a break, and then you can come back. So
Can that person, I can't remember the exact ruling, but
yeah.
what was that?
Yeah, so it's a 1-year hiatus between the 6-year terms. That's in your charter, so you'd have to go to referendum, change the charter.
Okay, got that, but can they
I don't know if there's emergency.
rotate into another board? Correct, right? So maybe we can work on that and having the current ones coming up then to join another board if they continue to continue serving. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I also want to make one last comment. Our Board of Adjustment and Appeals Advisory Board, I'm happy to say, extremely happy, we haven't really had any meetings. And the reason is we have a city planner now, we have a wonderful building department, and I think when people come in with their issues or whatever, the building department's very strong, and they're telling them right now, they're saying, these are our codes, you must follow them. The only way to go to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals is going to be if it's a hardship, and it has to be a proven hardship. So we haven't had any meetings, and I know some people that are on there that are saying, well, we're not having any meetings. Well, that's a good sign. Finally, after 6 years, we've got this all together, and we've all worked very hard on this, especially Peggy, with the building department. So that was very good. So that's good news, but they feel they're not participating enough. However, I do want to ask one more question. From what I understand, they are not going to, that you weren't looking at the people that have applied. Do we have some people that have applied now? I think you told me at least
For
3.
the applications?
For any of them?
We do have a few applications in a pool. We do have a pool of applicants.
About how many? Because what we're doing is we're waiting until January to appoint them. No? No? We're not? Okay. Well, wait, on the other ones, though. Yeah.
We're not. We're waiting for, the woman that was here today wasn't here.
No, I understand. I'm talking about the others.
And yeah, and when we get them in, we're taking a look, one, to make sure, one of them doesn't qualify as a resident.
Correct.
Oh,
You
all right.
can't,
Them. Yeah, okay.
can't be on a board. So
Yeah.
Right.
we're going through that process. As soon as we get them, we're going to bring them to you. We're not.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
And
So
I
we're
see
not
you're all shaking
waiting.
your head, yeah, do this, so I'm getting that as my directive motion to continue that process. So we really haven't fixed ourselves to that date just yet because we have so many vacancies.
Yeah,
We're
we have to
continuing
get
to
them
pursue.
through. Yeah.
We're putting stuff out, asking for it on a regular basis and requests. But again, I think Mr. Axelrod hit it. You guys get your friends, knock on doors, please, get people to come participate. there's a commitment, there's some time. I don't know that technology is going to fix all of that, but, if you're interested, come on, so.
Okay. All right, so I guess this has to be looked into, the advisory boards again.
Yeah, I was just looking again for some feedback today,
Right.
just kind of opening up the discussion. I think we have a problem. I think it needs addressing at a couple of different levels, and we'll push on, and I'll try to refine this a little more. Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to come to our last new business, a happy one, ratifying the appointments of members to the U.S. Census 2020 Complete Count Committee. I refer this to the town manager.
You have 4 volunteers that are going to help our residents through the census process. Lois Albertson's also going to be helping a lot with that, along with Teresha, to help residents. It is digital. April 1st, fill out your census, please. So we'll have the residents help and meet. So if I can get a motion, just, if you will, formalizing these as our census committee, that would be appreciated.
Certainly. Okay, I'm looking, there's something here. Where are the names? I'm looking at my paperwork. You got them here. They're over here. Oh, okay. We are going to have Douglas Hillman, Harry Adwar, Lynn Hankin, Holly Bott, and Lois Albertson. And I want to thank all of these volunteers. It's a very, very important issue for the country. Yes? No? No.
And Mr.
No.
Axelrod has volunteered.
No,
Do I have a
no,
motion
no.
on the table?
Okay. All right. So what I would need then is a motion with these names on it, Peggy.
All right, I'll make the motion to appoint Douglas Hillman, Harry Adwar, Lynn Henkin, Holly Bott, and our librarian head Lois Albertson to our 2020 Census Complete Count Committee.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Yes.
Mayor Zelniker?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And I want to thank all the volunteers. Okay. Now we're going to have our last public comments and requests. Agenda items only. No? More?
14.
14.
Well, Madam Mayor, if I may, I apologize. I have to leave now. I've got another meeting that I
Okay, go
have
ahead.
to go to. I apologize.
That's okay. There should be nothing major.
That's.
We'll just blame you for everything that doesn't go right.
I have 13 is public comments and requests, and 14 was the town commission reports. Well, did anybody have any public comments or requests? That was them. You want to say something? No, finito. Okay, now we're going to go to 14 town commission reports. Okay? Commissioner David?
My bad.
Commissioner Barry Donaldson?
Yes, and I'll make this very short. I attended the session of the Florida Legislative Commission legislative meeting up in, Kissimmee, Orlando area on the 14th. I prepared a packet. Some are on the table if the public would like to get some, and others were distributed to the commissioners. The purpose of the particular session I was at is that the people who were attending that conference and served on committees could kind of get a wrap up on the different policies that were adopted as we went through that process. I'm going to do a real quick summary on each policy point. It's very easy. Regarding utilities, natural resources, and public works that I served on, what we centered on was developing a water needs assessment. We didn't try to set anything too ambitious. We just think the problem needed more definition, encouraged that to happen. So that was, in a nutshell, our policy. Finance, taxation, and personnel focused on supporting Florida business by updating the tax laws. Florida is only one of 2 states that does not have tax laws on the books regarding internet purchases. They would like that addressed. Land use and economic development dealt with supporting property rights protection. This is a very important statement because this goes to the heart of the Burt J. Harris Jr. Act. It also, under some proposals that are being put forward that the league does not support, falls over into the business area. So this could affect short-term rentals, kind of a situation where if you negotiate with one person and say, yeah, you can have 6 people in your unit, across the board, it immediately applies. In effect, you're making law when you make a settlement, and the league thinks that's a dangerous precedent. So we're going to have a lot of fighting going on over that one. The Municipal Administration Policy Committee focused directly on short-term rentals, requesting that we continue to have tools to address that issue. At the same time, I want to point out that STRs apparently have a $31 billion impact on Florida's economy. We heard from at least, several communities who said, we love it. It keeps our town going. So it's not, people aren't across the board opposed to it. It has good applications. We just need to keep an eye on it. Transportation intergovernmental, their policy statement was to make transportation funding more flexible. And then they touched on what we called other areas of importance, ranging from affordable housing, cybersecurity, and so forth. So anyway, there's a lot of good information in here. There's a packet in here on the legislative bill summaries for 2020. It states whether the league is on a watch period, opposing it, or supporting it. Some of this is important, and I kind of want to put all of this in context, because I believe in early February we have the legislative days, I think, up in Tallahassee. I think March. Anyway, it's not too early for us to start thinking a little bit about the attendance there, who should go, and the kind of messages that we want to carry up there during that period, and be able to relate some of it back to what the league is supporting and some to some of the funding requests that we have in place. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And Commissioner Seidman?
Sure, thank you. Not much. No, you go.
You're doing it.
You go.
Okay. All right.
I'll cap it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, you want me to do it now?
Yeah, you go and I'll cap it.
I'll pick up what she wants to talk about with the manager's report.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else you want to say?
Yes. Yeah. I'll just, yes, one really lovely thing. The Coastal Star, lovely publication, and the Palm Beach Post both ran photos of our lovely police chief and his staff appearing at the St. Lucy's symposium about violence and trafficking of humans, especially the young women under 18. It's common. It even happens in Boca. Anyway, I just want to thank the chief and was glad to have these publications cover the effort. Both publications are still very well read, if not in print, online. And then Marshall will give an update, and I'll cap that on the bills we have pending. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
No report.
No report. And all I have to say is one thing. Happy Thanksgiving out there. Have a good Turkey Day. Enjoy your family. I know, but I want him, well, that's my comment. Just happy Thanksgiving. Everybody should have a healthy and happy, and start off the holidays with a bright and happy disposition. Okay, and now we have our report from our town manager.
So I'll jump into the joint report again. As the commission knows, maybe the public doesn't, our appropriation requests at the House subcommittees did move forward. That's for our drainage project that we requested and the crosswalk projects.
Yeah.
Indications are that we have some good chance here. We might be able to do this, and I think that goes in part to the energy that Commissioner Gossett-Simon in, and then it comes back to what Donaldson was saying, we should probably be there. We may want to start thinking about being there. If we got a fighting chance, we should be there to advocate for ourselves, or at least know if there's a couple doors that need to be knocked on, or at least to be there at committee and, rally ourselves to it. So, but then the second part is the Senate side.
Yes, the Senate side, yesterday I got an email. One bill is filed and published. The Senate side has a different method than the House. The Senate It goes into a committee. They basically edit it in a term, editing, making sure it's a complete form, it's accurate, no questions remain, and if it meets their standards, it's published. We have the drainage published and the crosswalks in the pipeline and expecting to be published very soon. And then I got an email yesterday that stated, this whole thing has gone very quickly, which it usually doesn't. Don't worry about it, it's all good. So the fact that it's gone this quickly before Thanksgiving is different. We also have a unique situation. In 2018, the legislature adopted rules that say in the even years, they start the process in January in terms of the legislative session. And in odd years, it starts in March. So we had a 2-month earlier date for everything, which is why I was pushing last summer to get this going. Mm-hmm. Is it a done deal? No, but it looks very hopeful. I also heard from over 40 residents in emails, and I'm forwarding all of those to both the senator and the representative. And I wrote thank yous to the people on both committees, thanking them for our unanimous votes in the House. I mean, that was really amazing. Apparently, when it's unanimous, it's early, and we're not asking for $23 million like Cape Coral
Right.
or $5 million like Pasco County for one drainage ditch. Then we have a good chance. Just fingers crossed. Thank you.
So yes, we're making progress, things we've never done before, as I've learned. That Highland Beach hasn't gone through this process, so, the first time might be the charm. Again, we'll have to, as we get closer towards those days, do we want to, head up there or some type of strategy, communication? We'll have to take a look at what might suit us best. On some other issues that are out there, seems to be this continual, what does it cost to run the water department? And I guess I couldn't figure out, well, what is the true question? I mean, the budget is basically $4.6 million to run your water department, and it accounts for all transfer of funds for debt service. It's just your rate structure doesn't include $1.43 million, which you do through the ad valorem property taxes. But it costs $4.6 million to run your water department. So I just wanted to make that out there. Hopefully that answers the random questions that are out there. The EPA sent a thank you or a sorry or apology letter for what the EPA sends. It's pretty, they didn't say they screwed up, but they at least said that there were errors. They recognized it. We have not, and clarified we have not been in violation. So those were good things we were able to close out. Other than that, I would say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. It's been great. We'll get a manager's minute out this week, so some of the information and progress and activities of the commission will be out to the public, so they'll know what we're working on. Other than that, thank you.
Can I just say something? Yes. The Delray Chamber of Commerce is having a legislative luncheon next Tuesday. There's going to be 6 representatives from the House and 5 from the Senate. It may be something you guys want to go to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 5:08 this afternoon. Thank you. I just met all the senators.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's terrible. I mean, you can't just.
I need signatures.
Yeah, so it's like an 80%.